I saw the first pound of Colombian. I'm going to buy a boat. I'm going to get the boat first and then reach out. So all I needed was a place to offload. And I found a very wealthy man that had this huge estate. And I gave the guy, some good cash, and he would turn his back. I ended up with $1.5 million in my pocket. I should have gotten caught. I don't know how I didn't get caught.
George Gleckler is a psychologist based here in Los Angeles. But for 40 years, he was one of the most prolific pot smugglers in American history. Born and raised in Long Island in the 1970s, George was one of the earliest gringos to begin unloading pot cargo ships coming up from Colombia and anchoring in the waters off the coast of New York City. George was always seeking adventure and the next thrill. Besides manning pot ships for Colombian cartels, he got his pilot's license and began flying in plane loads of Mexican sinsemilla from Sinaloa and set up a distribution ring from the East Coast all the way to Seattle, Washington. He can only speculate how many tons of pot he moved in his 40-year career. He was never caught and so didn't make the headlines like other famous traffickers of his era, but it was undoubtedly millions and millions of pounds. However, George was much more than just a drug smuggler. He was an avid painter and artist and interested in the power of psychiatry and therapy to help heal the human mind. He talks about his own trauma from childhood and how it went untreated and eventually led him into substance abuse and illegal activity. After having children, George decided it was time to retire from the game. He settled in Los Angeles and became a certified neuropsychologist, and to this day, he still has a very successful practice. He truly was one of the most fascinating cats I've had the pleasure of speaking with. For a bonus talk with George, where he dives further into how he transformed his life from drug-addicted outlaw to a sober and honest citizen, go over to Patreon, patreon.com/TheConnectShow. Ladies and gentlemen, you can only get stories like this one right here. I give you George Gleckler right here in The Connect with Johnny Mitchell.
I had a so-called partner. When I first met him, he said, I'm a pilot. I said, you want to smuggle? We were getting up to 300-400 pounds on a plane. We landed in Chilliwack and we went through customs. And then we snuck back through the mountains and went and loaded up and brought it back the same exact way.
That's when I see lights behind me start to flash. And I didn't even think, I just hit it. I was driving like my life depended on it. Then I parked the car, hopped out, closed the door, and I started running.
And he pulls out a burner, a shank, it's like 6 inches. And then he passes it to me. And he goes, here, that's yours. Don't ever leave the cell block without this. He was the reason I made it out of that place alive.
Did you ever, did you get drafted?
No, I was at the University of Arizona.
Okay.
Friends of mine were coming back in body bags, and it was just a bad situation, man.
How did you dodge it?
I was student deferment.
Right. So what part of Long Island are you from?
Believe it or not, the town's called Hicksville.
Yeah, it's accurate though, because they're Long Island Hicks.
It was right in the middle. And then we moved to Bay Shore.
Okay.
But I went to Hicksville High School. Went with Billy Joel.
Right. A lot of talent has come out of Long Island.
Yeah.
They get out and they do not return, most of them. Now, are you from a middle-class family? What was the household like?
Oh, God, it was a trip. I have PTSD from it. That's what it was like.
Okay.
My dad worked at Grumman Aircraft for his entire life. He was a plumber before that. He played minor league baseball, and I think that's part of why he got depressed and kind of withdrew. If he said 9 words to me in my life, that was a lot.
Wow. Okay.
And my mom was a victim of child sexual abuse. And she got psychotic at times. It was really bad. Yeah, wow. I didn't know who I had to poke my head in. Which mom's is here right now?
Wow. Okay. So you effectively had no parents.
I had parents. I had a roof over my head. I had everything I needed. I didn't want for anything.
Right.
But I couldn't trust. They were unpredictable and not stable. Mm-hmm. My dad was stable, but he was removed, mentally removed, I think, because of my mom.
Yeah.
But my mom was just very unstable.
Okay.
And that was scary for a kid because you look for protection.
Yeah.
Well, he's not protecting me. And she's not going to protect me. I'm on my own. Mm-hmm. And what happens is there was an incident at Jones Beach where she had me by the hand at a very young age where a wave came up and the white water took my feet out from under me. And I just remembered looking up and seeing her, and she was like totally, like smiling and not paying attention. And I remember from that day on, it became clear. It was like I was a kid with two minds, one that was in reality and one that was in fantasy. Now with fantasy, yeah, my mom's there. She's going to protect me. But the reality was, no, kid, you're on your own.
Yeah.
And that's from then on, I lived one person with two minds.
Yeah.
And it's different than somebody who has multiple personality disorder. It's not that. It's just like fantasy was easier.
I have the same thing. I still have to battle fantasies of the old life of.
Oh, yeah.
You wouldn't even believe the things that go through my head, despite all of this podcast success, and I'm so far removed from the old days, but I still have like dreams of being a drug kingpin. It's the stupidest thing. And I create these different characters. I have a whole family. It's really psychotic, but I don't know how to get it out of my head. So from a young age, I think a lot of kids are like that. But usually it's like they want to play sports and.
Oh, I played sports. I was a average kid growing up.
How did you get in high school? Were you a pot smoker? Were you selling pot?
No, pot wasn't really a big deal until about 11th grade. People started getting high.
Yeah.
And, I was always drifting between friends. I could never really, make a connection. I think that's what hurt me the most. I couldn't connect at a deeper level with people, and I would just keep drifting, trying to connect. So there was a lot. And then all of a sudden, my brother, I say brother, but he was actually my cousin. My mother's sister lived next door, and we had this compound, so to speak. School was a dead end right next to my house, and she had a house, and my father, being German, had these big hedges all the way around, and he made it, like a compound. And he kind of just retired into a walled-in garden in the backyard and just checked out.
So how did you, when you went to Arizona for college, when did you start, selling product? And how did that come about?
Well, let's go back to Hicksville for a second.
Yeah.
My brother dragged me one. He said, come on, I'm going to show you, turn you on to something cool. And it was called the Elegant Billiard Parlor. And this guy died that owned it, and his wife, Vicky, she looked like Mae West. Big blonde wig, big boobs, bright red lipstick. She ran it, and everybody was her kid. And, it was all the lost children gathered there. And all of a sudden, I connected. And I found it real easy to become competent selling hash, just dimes of hash. I'd buy an ounce, sometimes a quarter pound of hash. And I was a guy to go to in the pool room if you wanted hash. And that's where I learned to do heroin. That was, if you were a man, you did some heroin. You didn't say no.
Right.
Otherwise, you were a punk.
Wow. So that's how you guys looked at heroin back in those days, not as something that like a dirty street junkie does. But was it kind of glamorous?
No, not at all. Yeah, it was probably, it's more like you said, dirty street drug. But, it was just, we're a bunch of lost kids.
Yeah.
Some were bad. And I was a bad kid, but not by nature.
But there must have been some kind of identity around using heroin in those days. Like, I'm a heroin addict.
It wasn't spoken, man. We did it among ourselves. I never put a needle in my arm. I snorted it or I smoked it. But one time I did a needle, but I just like the high from smoking it. And I could also, control was an important thing in my life. It was so out of control in my life, I needed control. So if I hit it up, I lost control. If I just snorted or smoked a little, I could still maintain. And I like that.
Wow.
Dead in the feelings, but still operating 100%.
And you're a high school kid still.
12th grade? Yeah.
Wow. Who's selling you smack? Who's got the H back then?
Oh, God, it was just a friend. He went to prison, did a robbery, went to prison, came out a junkie. And he spread it into the pool hall.
All right. And it's brown? It's brown stuff?
No, it was white, China white.
China white, okay.
Yeah.
But you never got into that selling that. You strictly stayed on the other end of the bag.
Stayed away from it, man.
Yeah.
I just bought some, with the profits from the hash. It was cheap back then.
Yeah.
Dime bag, it was $10.
Hash. Interesting. So it's dark, gummy looking hash.
All
brown
kinds.
hash?
There was red Lebanese, blonde Lebanese, Kathmandu. Had
Right. And that kind of predated marijuana, did it not, in the U.S.? Or was it just around the same time?
I found it after marijuana.
Okay.
And it, just maybe it was there before. I don't know. But in my experience, I got it later, a year or two after the weed. And, it was Nepalese temple ball. That was the big thing. If you could get the round Nepalese temple ball with there was this white swirl in it, and they said it was opium. I don't know if it was or not.
Interesting. Okay. So then, but you graduated, but you got into college somehow.
I went to St. John's University for 2 years.
Okay.
And
you continue selling hash?
No, I kind of quit that. Okay. I got busy with school, and I didn't know what I wanted to do. The Vietnam War, it sounds bad because a lot of people died there, and I don't want to say I was trying to not go, but I was, to be honest. Mm-hmm. And, I had 3 friends come back. They were dead. Kids I played baseball with in Little League.
Wow.
So I didn't want to go. So I went to St. John's, and I still didn't know who I was. And then my friends came back during the summer, and they were at the University of Arizona. They talked me into it. And just like that, Mexico's only like an hour away.
Yeah.
60 miles. So I said, okay, I'm in. Yeah. And I transferred from one school to another.
Of course. And the weather, my God, from a kid from Long Island.
Oh, my God.
You must have loved being in Arizona.
Yeah. It was great. And it was it was small then, 300,000 people in Tucson.
Yeah.
50,000 students. It was just great. Mm-hmm. It's just what I needed. And I rented an apartment since I wasn't a freshman. I could live off campus. Mm-hmm. So 4 of us got in a two-bedroom apartment, all from Hicksville. And it was wonderful.
Nice.
And, what I learned, all the apartments in Sunset Towers, most of them were smugglers and dealers.
Wow.
It was insane.
Wow. What year are we talking now?
That was 1970.
1970.
Yeah.
So this is like the very beginning of the Mexican kind of like marijuana family smuggling industry, you might say.
Well, I don't know when Mexicans, you see these old movies, from the 30s with weed. Mm-hmm. I'm sure it came from Mexico, but I never put a name to the place it came from.
I'm sure. Obviously it's coming from Mexico if you have all these stash houses in Tucson. So that's...
Yeah, so wow. Sunset Towers. And then next door, this really hot girl, Rosa. She was up. There's Nogales is the border town.
Yep.
There's Arizona, and then there's Mexico, Nogales. Mm-hmm. And she lived on her father by chance. I went to her house for Thanksgiving. He was a customs agent. I was, oh, Christ. So she had a friend that came from Mexico named Marco. He was my first legit connection.
Okay.
And I said, Marco, I just went on the campus and I bought an ounce of weed, and they called it a lid.
Yeah.
I don't know what a lid means. What is a lid? He said, he said, sometimes it's 3 fingers, sometimes it's 2 fingers.
Yeah.
And I said, well, let me tell you, it's going to cost you $20 in New York, and this is only $10 here.
Yeah.
Let's get together.
Sure.
So then there was this guy, Jim. I didn't know how to put it together yet. I never smuggled. Mm-hmm. This guy, Jim, did a couple Mexican trips. So I turned him on to Marco. So I went with them. They paid me $500 to carry 2 duffel bags of weed. And there are Army sacks, Army green duffel bags from Army surplus.
And so you went down to Mexico with Marco?
With Marco, with Jim, and 3 other guys.
Wow. Where did you go? Where did you meet to pick up the work?
Marco took us to, there's a few, I would say it's 4 or 5 blocks from just going inland more, from the border.
Okay, so you're in Nogales.
In Nogales,
okay,
Mexico.
Gotcha.
And it was like creepy as hell, man, because we were these white guys on a corner away from where the tourists go. And we were just like, dust is coming up. There's the neon lights. It looked like some kind of movie scene. And I couldn't wait to get the hell out of there. Finally, they came and grabbed us and said, all right, jump in the car. And they took us to this road and said, all right, get out and run up that hill. And one of the things Jim told me, he says, make sure you bring 2 inner tubes, rubber inner tubes. And I said, okay. So we run through the cemetery. I'm tripping over tombstones. Dogs are barking. And there's the fence, the United States border with barbed wire. Thank you, Jim. We took the tire tubes and we threw them over the barbed wire, man. And that was great. It worked perfect.
That was the border wall back then.
Yeah.
That was like the strict border wall.
Yeah, it was like a V shape of barbed wire.
Yeah.
So you had to be kind of an athlete, to climb out under it and then flip yourself over.
Yeah.
And then throw, first you had to throw the bags over.
Right.
And each bag weighed 50 pounds. So that was a trip.
Wow.
Yeah. And there was like a basin almost. And then it was like 300-yard dash to this hill. It was like a plateau. And there's a scrub, whatever it was. And then once you hit that spot, you're wide open, man. Anyone with a flashlight can hone in on you. There was this mound of dirt. It was like just like a plateau. You'd go up like sand dunes, but it was rock and dirt. And you go about 100 feet and it plateaus, and then you just walk 8 miles.
Wow.
And we had the car stashed right near the drive-in theater. And we knew, how to locate it. Yeah. And Jim was up and down that 100 times on a dirt bike.
Yeah.
And so we did it.
Wow. So you got over a couple 100 pounds of pot as...
I had 100. That's all I could carry.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, we got...
2 college kids.
Yeah, 100 pounds. Yeah, we had 500 pounds.
Wow.
So he did well. I said, what'd you pay for it, Jim? I said, never mind. It was like $12 he paid.
For how much?
A pound.
Yeah.
And so I found out that I could get it for $7 from Marco. So I decided to go. I only did it with Jim. Jim was a weird guy, man. He was like on another level. He was spaced, He wasn't autistic, but he got really high on something and never came down.
Yeah.
We were, that first trip, we're walking through the desert, and he hands me this piece of paper, and it's this scribbled line to follow. And he said, this is the map to the drive-in, George. I said, you're kidding. You want me to follow this? We're out in the middle of nowhere. And I said, what are you going to do? Well, there's a campfire there. I think it's the Border Patrol. I'm going to go up and see what they're talking about. And I just looked, he just took off and left us out there. We found the movie. I found a windmill that made noise, an old wooden one. And I walked towards it, and then sure enough, there was civilization. There was the drive-in. So we got back. We threw it in the trunk of a car and drove up the Nogales Highway.
And then now you realize, I can go around Jim and deal directly with Marco.
Yeah.
But
the next day, I go to Jim on campus. I goes, Jim, what'd you do, man? Oh, they were Border Patrol. I said, what did they do? What did they say? I don't know. I fell asleep. When I woke up, they were gone.
Yeah.
That was Jim.
Wow.
So I didn't feel too safe with him, so I did it myself.
What's up, guys? You've heard me talk about MANDO deodorant by now. They're on all the podcasts. I kept hearing about them, so I had to try it for myself, and it is now the only deodorant I use. MANDO is whole body deodorant, meaning you could put it on any part of your body. That's your pits, your legs, your nutsack, your face if you wanted to. It's that awesome. It's dermatologist tested, and it's gentle on all your bits. It controls odor up to 72 hours, and that's clinically proven. You can choose from 5 cologne quality scents, including Mount Fuji, Cloverwood, Pro Sport, Bourbon Leather, and Unscented if you want to go stealth. MANDO was created by a doctor who saw firsthand how body odor was being misdiagnosed and mistreated. And again, it's good for the whole body, pits, package, feet if you want. This is truly a revolutionary deodorant. MANDO stops odor before it starts and is American made. I love MANDO. I use them every day. It's the only deodorant I use now. These guys sent me a care package, and I'm hooked. I use the bourbon leather because you smell like a man. You smell like a guy that smokes good cigars and likes to drink whiskey. I don't like the fruity deodorant that you buy at the supermarket. I love MANDO, and I use it on any part of my body that needs to cover up that BO stench. I'm in Texas now. I'm sweating all the time, and MANDO has me covered. Also, it's healthy for you. It's aluminum-free, baking soda-free, cruelty-free, dye-free, and it's vegan. So you're not putting all those disgusting Dow chemicals into your body. Right now, MANDO wants to plug you with the big package. Check out what they're giving you. Solid stick deodorant, a cream deodorant, and 2 free products of your choice, including deodorant wipes and mini body wash. Plus, free shipping. Are you ready to make the upgrade to MANDO? New customers get $5 off a starter pack that equates to 40% discount when you go over to shopmando.com and use promo code Mitchell. Again, that's shop, shopmando.com with the promo code Mitchell, Mitchell. You know how to spell my last name, to get that discount. Thank you, Mando. Let's get back into the episode.
Okay, so did you start making runs down there, or did you now send your own runners?
I went myself.
Wow.
Yeah.
How many runs did you make like that?
I made probably 3 or 4, and I started getting horses and tying horses together and backpacking them with horses, you know. And the farmers, you know, I'd have to cut, you know, like
horses.
Yeah, I had to cut fencing, but the ranchers didn't mind as long as I mended them. But the first trip was the scariest.
Hang on. So where you got horses on the U.S. side?
I bought horses. I owned them.
Okay, so you bought horses.
Yeah.
You brought them from the stable, brought them to the border fence, went over to Mexico, cut, and then came back with the pot, cut holes in the fence. And
no,
then,
I didn't cut holes in the fence.
Okay,
Did the
threw it
same
over.
thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then you put them on
Then tie them together.
Dude, you're like an old Mexican man on a burro, just trudging through the desert.
like the Adventures of Don Juan.
Yeah,
You know?
exactly. That's hilarious.
But
And so how were you able to bring back more pot that way? Now that you had horses?
oh yeah, I didn't have to pay anybody. I just had to feed the horses.
Right.
You know, and I didn't trust anybody. You know, growing up with my mom, she was paranoid.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, everybody was the enemy. So I kind of grew up thinking everybody's the enemy too. So I didn't trust people too well.
Right.
The first trip I ever made, though, on my own, this is important. It was like I was either going to quit or I was going to continue. I ran down that 300 yards without the horses myself, and lights started coming. A vehicle started coming right alongside the fence. I couldn't tell what side of the fence. And then I saw him. He was on this side of the fence. And, you know, with the hill, when it rains a lot, it makes these little, like, crevices. And I took the weed and myself, and I just buried myself in this crevice. He went up on top because he hit the lights and he didn't see me on the bottom.
Wow.
And he was up above me. And I don't know how he had radar or something, but
maybe.
You know, he just sat there for hours, and I would sit there.
And so you're just lying there
in
hidden.
this dirt, and God knows I'm thinking about scorpions and snakes, and you know, you just sit back and say, God, what are they doing in the pool room right now?
Yeah,
You know,
right.
Look where I am right now.
Can you imagine if the cats in the pool room knew that you were hiding out in the desert with 500 pounds of pot on you?
Yeah, it was more like, what the am I doing here actually in the pool room?
But you obviously got something out of it besides just money.
Yeah. So, all this, you know, doing the dumb thing, I took a rock, like you think you would, and I heaved it 50 yards, you know, and he wouldn't fake it. You know, he didn't fake out. He put the light, boom, almost like 10 feet from me. And he didn't fall for it.
Wow.
It's like, look, this is this guy.
Yeah.
So I knew one thing. After about 3 hours, I had to get up on top and to the windmill before the sun came up. Because 8 miles, that's a long hike.
Yeah.
Especially carrying weed. And I said, okay, I have to leave the weed. I got to say goodbye to it. So I just rolled, you know, and it seemed like I had to go about 300 yards. Seemed like it took hours, but I don't know how long it took. But I finally got enough distance where I climbed up to the plateau, and he didn't see me. And I went and I walked back to the drive-in.
Did you eventually go back and get it?
No.
Get your pot?
No, that's really good. I had a 68 GTO. So I'm driving down the road. All of a sudden, the lights start flashing. Guy pulls me over, and it's him.
Oh.
I didn't know it at the time. He says, "What are you doing out here?" I said, "I just went to see some whores down in Nogales."
Yeah.
Well, why was he caught by the drive-in? And I just looked. It's just, I had no answer.
Yeah.
He said, "Come here, I'm going to show you something." He had my weed in the back of his truck.
Oh, no.
Yeah, excuse me.
But didn't have enough to put a case on you, though, right?
No.
You weren't with the dope.
No.
So what lesson did you learn that day?
Just, you want to be a criminal, you got to take a chance.
Yeah.
It's a risk.
And that didn't defer.
Nothing's a give me,
Mm-hmm. That didn't stop you, though.
It did for a month.
Mm-hmm.
I said, that was close. Now he's got me, he knows where I live because of the car registration.
Mm-hmm.
I have to change my address, which I did. And then I put it back together again. And I said, I'm going to do the horses. And I'm going to go further down, way further down the fence line. And that's what I did.
Yeah.
I stayed out of that area.
Okay, so you're getting over 500 pounds of pot. And then how are you, for $7 a pound? And then how are you flipping them? Are you selling them locally or are you sending them back east?
Well, that's what I went to Moco for. I said, let's get them. I'll give you some money up front. And you and I split, and we go to New York with it. Because it sold in Tucson for $65 a pound.
Wow.
And that was a cheap, up to $75. And then we take it to New York is $125 to $135.
Wow.
So it was a good markup.
That's from
Good
$7?
day's work.
Yeah.
In the 70s?
Yeah, right.
Wow.
So you're making tens of thousands a run.
Yeah, I was going for, I decided I was going to go into School of Education. And they said, well, you can become a teacher and get $7,700 a year.
Right.
Or I can make it in a night.
Yeah,
I said,
easily.
yeah.
At least. Wow, there's so much room. There was so much markup. Now, how did that progress?
It progressed to where I said, I don't feel safe out there in the desert anymore.
Mm-hmm.
There were stories of, I don't know if it's true, they're saying they're bringing from Vietnam back now, his radar stuff, these, sound detectors, and it could have been real. I said, I don't feel safe out there, Marco. And you're just sitting here. What can we put together? My sister, he says. I said, tell me about your sister. Well, she lives in Mexico, in the house, but she works at Valley National Bank in Nogales, Arizona. And she's been working there for 12 years. And I said, yeah, so? He says, well, we're going to take her and make keys for her car. We're going to load the trunk up. We're going to let her drive through the border like she has for 12 years. And then we're going to go steal the car from Valley National Bank and unload it.
Yeah.
We did that for a whole year.
Oh, my God. And his sister never knew.
No, never
nice
knew.
brother. Good older brother.
But I came back. I said, okay, we're done with this.
How much did you get across? Quite a few trips, I imagine.
We could fit, without her noticing it, a good 400 pounds, 500 pounds.
And you could get rid of them like that on the East Coast, right?
Within a week.
Yeah. And then were you also transporting it yourself back?
I drove
east?
it back.
Okay. So you're constantly
back and forth.
Back and forth.
I loved it.
Wow.
Route 66, man. It was nothing else in the world like it.
Right.
It's dead today. They have all the bypasses. I used to love that. 2 a.m, you could wheel into a place in New Mexico and just the cafe's open all night. There's a couple of truck drivers. You tell some old stories. And then you're on the road again. That was America.
Right.
Yeah, I loved it.
Right. You're having a steak and steak and eggs.
Yeah.
A couple of laughs. And they don't know you got this college kid.
That was real America.
Right.
Now they have Motel 6 with bypasses. You miss, and now you go, I went off. Oh, it was Grants, New Mexico. And I went where that was my favorite stop. And the cafe was open. No one was in it.
Yeah.
It was old. It was run down. There was no one on the streets. It was just a ghost town.
How long would it take you to drive from Arizona to Long Island?
It was exactly 2,400 miles. 2,450 miles. So 50 miles an hour is 48 hours.
Okay, so you spend 2 nights on the road.
Yeah, or it would take 4 days if you want to take it easy.
Yeah.
Or a couple times we blasted through. We did some white crosses and blasted through in 48 straight hours.
And you never had a problem with highway patrol? Never got
back
pinched?
then.
Yeah.
No, it
Wow.
was easy.
So now here you are, like 21, 22 years old?
Yeah, 21, 22.
So you're financially free.
Yeah.
Are you still going to school?
Yeah, but I got on academic probation.
I wonder why.
And then I started paying this guy, George in Barnett. He was going to class for me.
Nice.
It was funny. I was on campus one day and I was walking with George, and we were both George, and the instructor said, "Hi, George." And I looked and he was talking to him. He said, "That was your geography teacher, George."
Nice.
I couldn't lose the student deferment.
Right.
So I paid someone to go to school for me.
Right.
It sounds like a thing, but who's going to volunteer and say, "I want to go to Nam and get shot at"?
No.
God
People
bless
were
the
shooting
people that went.
themselves. People were shooting themselves on purpose to get out of going.
Yeah, I still feel like saying it, and laughing.
That's all right.
But I,
George Bush, Trump, they all got rich people deferments. So
God, Nixon and Kissinger should be war criminals.
yeah, they are.
Cambodia.
Yeah. So, are you still doing H?
Yeah.
You still doing smack throughout this whole period when you're loving life, you're making money, you're building your identity as this drug trafficker.
Yeah, I got married, and my wife she was a French. Legros was her last name, and she was beautiful, and we had a beautiful daughter, Kim, and everything was right. And then I realized, I'm a smuggler. I'm addicted to heroin. Now my wife is. She wants to have a family. And she was young, and I was young, and we went in opposite directions. But today, we're good friends.
Okay, so you're smuggling pot through Marco's sister's trunk. This goes on for about a year. How long do you continue? Like, what do you switch it up after you?
I wasn't happy anymore. So what I did, I said, "Marco, it's time we quit." I always believed that we have certain limits. And certain trips have limits too. People get in trouble when they try to cowboy it.
Right.
So I said, "We're going to buy your sister a house. I'm holding back some money. You could buy a house in Nogales, Mexico for $10,000. Marco started bitching, and I said, "No, I'm keeping 5 back." And we bought the sister a house. And I left that, and one day there's a friend of Marco's, his name was Juan Franco, and he was from Arizona, Nogales, Arizona, I'm sorry. He had a friend come to the door, and I'll never forget it. The house where my wife was, and he was a 50-year-old guy, and he was dapper, I have to tell you. It was slick, blonde hair, blue eyes. And I said, "Juan, you set me up, didn't you?" "No, George, no, he's not a cop." I said, "You a cop?" And he says, "Of course not." Yeah. And turns out that he was a guy that he came from an extremely wealthy family in Culiacan.
Culiacan, Sinaloa.
Yeah. His family, I don't know the exact year, is after World War I that they moved to Culiacan, and they had him, and he was born and raised in Mexico, and his family bought a cattle ranch. They had German machineries. He took me to the factory, and they tanned leather. They made the shoes. They had the retail stores.
Okay.
They had the complete monopoly on shoes.
Right.
And I said, "So what's this deal about?" And he said, "Well, it's not operating." I said, "What happened?" "Well, me and my brother, when my parents died, we went through all the money. So we need to get some marijuana smuggling going so we can..."
Yeah.
kick things back in gear.
Sure.
I said, "You want to smuggle?" And I said, what do you got to offer? He said, "I'm a pilot." And then I said, "Wow, how long have you had a pilot's license?" And that's when he told me he was a German Luftwaffe pilot.
Holy.
Name was Richard Timmerman. And what happened is the family also had a fish delivery business where they flew fish around Mexico and to the States. And he learned to fly at an early age. Then they sent him for an education in Berlin. And I talked to him, he had a tremendous library in his house. It was fascinating. But he saw Hitler preaching before Hitler became in power, and he saw the whole rise of the third.
Then he volunteered to join the Luftwaffe?
No, he said they drafted him into it.
Wow.
They made him.
Even though he was a Mexican living in Mexico.
He became a flight instructor.
Wow. So did he fly for the Luftwaffe in World War II?
Yeah, he flew one of the first jets.
Whoa.
And he got shot down in that article I sent you. I did the best I could at interpreting it, but it gave you an idea of who the guy was. He stole the plane, got shot down, stole another one, and finally they got word to the family in Mexico. And they were very powerful people. They were so wealthy. And right in the middle of World War II, he told me, he said that General Eisenhower sent him to New York, a German Luftwaffe pilot. Put him up in New York City and then got him a flight down to Culiacan.
Wow. And why would he do that? Just because of who his parents were?
Yeah.
Wow.
And probably money.
Yeah.
But,
yeah.
He was
We helped a lot of Nazis out.
Sure.
America did, for sure.
They mentioned he was a spy, and it flipped me out, in that article. It was written, and that was a tribute to, he passed away, and that was a tribute to him.
Wow.
And it mentioned that, various things, and I being a spy, and I said, well, he wasn't a spy. I said, well, where is this woman getting this information?
Okay, so tell me about it. So now these guys, he's over the hill, family's gone, he needs money. What does he give you? Does he match your price, or does he match Marco's price, or does it get better?
It gets better. Wow. His dream was he brought me to this building. He said, this is going to be the new, house of the Bombarderos, the fire department.
Yeah.
So.
And this is in Culiacan?
Yeah.
Wow.
He wanted to be fire chief. He was like a big kid. I'm leaving things out. Like when I first met him, he had to prove himself. So he said, watch this. He loaded up his trunk with some weed from Nogales, drove right through the border with it. And I said, we're not doing that again. You're too valuable.
Mm-hmm.
What are we going to do for a plane?
Right.
He went and stole one.
Wow.
And we started doing airplane trips out of Mexico.
So he's taking off from where?
It was in between Culiacan and Nogales.
Okay.
And he had some people there. His bill paid off. It was a strip with plane, and Arizona is nothing but one giant landing strip.
Of course.
We found dirt roads, and all I had to do was get wooden stakes and tape flashlights to them and drive them into the ground. And there's the runway.
Wow.
We'd run down and turn them all on when we got contact with them.
Yeah.
And he'd land the plane. We'd just throw it in our trunks and go.
Much more efficient than crawling over the fence.
Oh, yeah.
How much were you getting over on an average plane run?
Depends on the plane. Some planes couldn't carry and distance was another thing. The single engine seemed to outperform the twin engine back then. So we were doing single engine planes, and we were getting up to 300-400 pounds on the plane. Okay. And it was really
not a ton.
No,
not very much.
Not until
actually,
you got
comparatively.
the next plane we got was, we went on board an Aero Commando, and that was like a new corporate jet, a corporate type of airplane to take executives everywhere. It was a great plane, and
How much did you buy that plane for? Or did you steal that one too?
No, we bought it. We bought it used. I think it was about $40,000 at the time. But it was cheap.
And how much can you
bought
fit
a
in that one?
DC-3 for $35,000.
Yeah. Those are good planes.
Yeah.
I've heard. The DC-3, a
They
lot of
won
smugglers.
the war. They were amazing. They
Yeah.
never stopped.
A lot of smugglers preferred that plane, especially coming up from South America. They could make it all the way from Colombia to Florida or like New Orleans.
No, without bladder tanks. But they, another plane that was very good was, you know who Sky King was, the old show?
No.
Well, he had this, it was a Beech 18. It had on the tail, it had two upright pieces.
I've seen that. Yes.
And it was a tail dragger, just like the DC-3. And we could put close to 800 to 1,000 pounds in it safely.
Right.
You know, the 3 took a lot more, 3,000 pounds.
And what are you putting in that? What do you need to make a 3,000 pound run?
Same thing.
Yeah.
Well, with the DC-3, you need about, landing strip had to be 500 feet, not 500 feet, a half a mile long.
Okay.
The Beech and the Aero Commander, you could get down in 1,200, 1,500 feet.
Wow.
But you needed a half a mile with the DC-3, you know, to have a safe landing and takeoff.
Wow. Did you ever start flying?
I went for my license, and then I just let it fall through.
Yeah.
I just didn't keep up with it.
Did it seem to you better to let somebody else take the flying risk and you just grab the stuff when it lands and take off?
I wanted to be up in that plane,
You did?
man.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I did once when we were smuggling up into Canada and Alaska. I had a pilot from well, there was a guy that when you live in Tucson, you have people from all over the country coming to Tucson. It was like the Mecca to buy Mexican weed.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so I made close friends, one in Seattle, one in Chicago, New Jersey, New York, West Virginia. They ate this stuff up.
Yeah.
Huntington, West Virginia. So the guy in Seattle, we became really close, tight friends.
Yeah. Wow.
So High Times came out with a magazine article. On the cover it said, Alaska, north to the future. I'll never forget it. And then my mind clicks. And I said, what are they getting for it up there? I'm going, you know, and I called Corey. I said, ask some of you Canadians, man, because we were running weed up to Canada. And then we decided to also include Anchorage.
Yeah.
And they were for Colombian weed. I was sending Corey a truckload of Colombian weed when we started doing the Colombian. And we were taking that and selling it for $600 a pound, $650 a pound in Canada, and the same up in Alaska. I believe, I can't remember the exact price.
What was your price?
We were buying it in Colombia for
$10 or something?
Yeah, but there is varying degrees.
Sure.
You know? And
hang on, we'll get there. So I want to keep moving us through. So you've now got Culiacan weed flying in and landing in Arizona. What are you moving a week? How many runs are you doing a week?
Just one.
Okay.
You know, one every 2 weeks.
Okay. So
I was not somebody that was like, let's cowboy this thing. Let's just go for it.
Yeah.
You know, I really planned things out.
Yeah. Sounds like it.
I took trips down there, seeing how the road was, the highway.
Yeah.
You know, so I did my exploring.
Right.
You know,
you did your due diligence.
Yeah.
And now you're meeting all of these different distributors from all over the country.
Well, I asked them when they came to Tucson, how would you like to get it delivered? You know, you don't have to come here anymore.
Right.
And they said, oh, that'd be great, George. What price? So I gave them a break, like $110 a pound instead of $125. Wow. And they loved it. They, you know, and I would front them too, so they would make more money too.
And would you take the product yourself up to Seattle?
Yeah.
Whoa. So you're almost like a long haul truck driver.
I enjoyed being on the country roads, man.
Wow.
The road at night, there's nothing better. You go through Kansas and 2 a.m. and they're burning the hay fields, you know?
Yeah.
It's like really America, you know?
But doesn't that get old?
Now.
Doesn't that get old? You're always on the road, moving that kind of weight for people.
That didn't get old.
Wow.
I liked it. I liked being between point A and point B. That's the only place that made sense to me. I wasn't happy in Mexico, Colombia, wasn't happy at home, but put me between point A and point B. Wow. And I was my best. You know, I was comfortable.
Isn't that something? And you're just purely a middleman.
No, I smuggled and the weed, and I would say they were more the middleman. They would buy like 100 pounds from me, and I'd front them 100. Whatever they bought, I fronted.
Yeah.
And I reduced the price.
Yeah.
So it was a great deal for them. They didn't have to get on the road with it. They, you know, and they make their same money.
And you're still making, if you sell a pound for $110 a piece, and you're buying it for how much from?
Making over $100 a pound.
Wow. So you're getting it for about $5 from
$7.
Okay. And this is pretty good. Like, give us an idea of what Mexican brickweed looked like in 1972.
Oh, God. What was coming up, not from me, but there are times I would get, you know, I was a middleman for a couple times, like in Sunset Towers, and I would get a load of weed, and sometimes the whole entire plant would be packed into it, and they would brick it. Another time,
like they hadn't even trimmed the buds off of it. Oh my God.
Then I found Coke bottles, broken glass, and then one time a finger.
In the weed bale.
Yeah, it was like perfect. Each one was like a pound and 3/4.
Yeah.
They called it a kilo, but it was just a pound 3/4.
Yeah.
And
wow. So not even all of it was smokable. You got a goddamn finger.
Oh, you had
in there.
to get the seeds out, stems out, and clean it.
Wow. But it's always sold.
Yeah,
it always
sold. There was no competition.
Right. There was no competition, and there was barely any law enforcement.
Well, Jamaica became competition first. And I remember, but there wasn't enough Jamaican.
Right.
Just think, you got 6 million people living in New York.
Right.
You know, how long, you know, look at the rest of the country. How long is a few loads of Jamaican going to last?
Yeah, it's going to get sucked up instantly.
Yeah.
Okay, what were your biggest markets at the time when you're bringing in bud from Culiacan, when you're still in Arizona? What are your biggest buying
I would send
markets?
up to Seattle. I'd send some to New York. I would, you know, each trip was different.
Yeah.
I would like driving.
Yeah. What were your biggest buyers, though, do you think? Like, do you think it was the Northwest?
Oh, Northeast was the biggest.
Yeah, of course.
Population belt, and went up to Boston.
Yeah. So how long did you stay in Arizona doing this with this ex-Luftwaffe pilot?
Until my partner ripped him off. I had a so-called partner that I met in high school, in junior high school. I was selling firecrackers, and he was selling protection. And typical New York junior high.
Right.
So he muscled in on my scam. He wanted packs of firecrackers for protection. And I said, you. You know, so I got in a fight with one of these guys, and he was like left back 2 or 3 times. He was a big dude. And I got my ass whipped. And it was the last time I got my ass whipped. I took the next train to Jamaica, Queens, and joined a boxing gym.
Nice.
We used to, my mom loved going to New York City, and we'd take the Long Island train, change trains now at Jamaica for New York. And I would always look down, and it was like a sea of all different kinds of people.
Yeah.
It was a blend of every culture. And there's a boxing gym, big name, boxing. So I went there, and I said, I need to learn. This is what happened. I need to learn how to box. And he taught me how to box, man. And then I was so angry inside from childhood and everything else that I just fought everything that walked, you know. And
so you went to business with this guy, your childhood friend / bully?
Listen to this. He ended up getting shipped off to Nam because he punched the principal or something. I wasn't there, but he did something to, you know, Mr. Brown. And Bruce was out of school for good, and I got detention. And back in Tucson, Sunset Towers, I walk into the apartment one day, and who's sitting there but Bruce?
Wow. Was he AWOL?
He didn't get from Nam. No, he went through Nam, but I'm sure he hid underneath a truck. You know,
right?
He wasn't a hero.
Or he was part of the My Lai massacre.
In '71, Bruce got on a plane with a suitcase full of weed in Tucson, and I said, "You sure you want to do that?" And there was no security, but still, you know.
Yeah.
And he got busted.
Okay.
And then all of a sudden, we're driving around town visiting different connections. And Bruce said, "Oh, let's go down over here." And all of a sudden, we go down that street, and the cops are busting people, this house. And, there's Joey's house, and they were busting them. And I realized he never went to jail. He never went to court. He was working for the man.
He's ratting. There you go.
So I had to play, you want to keep your enemy close.
Yeah.
So I didn't confront him on it.
Right.
I just let him keep having his hands in some money. And eventually he got into the heroin really, really bad, and he just went bye-bye.
So then how did that make you leave Tucson? That's what I want to know. What's the next step after Arizona?
You couldn't sell the weed anymore. You got the Jamaican, like I said. It made people thirsty for more. And then the Colombian weed came in.
Okay.
And I remember sitting in Tucson, and I saw the first pound of Colombian weed. Yeah. And I said, holy shit. It was nice, tight little buds, small. They had seeds, but not too many.
Right.
And it was like, wow, these things are nice. And it got me a lot higher.
Yeah.
And then I got this brick of, they called it wacky weed. It was like almost blackish. And it was pressed really hard, and you'd have to like peel off. It was like paper thin each bud. You had to peel them off. Man, it was like doing, acid.
Yeah.
And I said, I got to get to Florida, and it's a good time. Bruce is out of control. I'm just going to take off.
Wow. How old are you?
25.
Okay.
And I left for good when I started going there doing trips, and then when I was 26, I was gone for good.
Okay. So where in Florida do you end up?
In Fort Lauderdale.
Okay.
And then I moved to New York, and I didn't like what I saw in Florida. And too many people getting ripped, and a lot of cops.
Sure.
So I said, I know Long Island really well. I'm going to work out of there, because I said, I'm not going to be hauling weed that I bought in Miami up to 95.
Yeah.
And New Jersey Turnpike was notorious for pulling people.
It's hot, right?
Yeah. So I said, I'm not doing that. I'm going to buy a boat. I'm going to get the boat first and then reach out.
Okay. And did you make Colombian connections while you were in Florida?
Yeah.
Okay.
There's an old Jewish fellow. His name was Howard. He had to be 55, 56 years old. And he was a hustler. And he used to go up to the Catskills in New York, and, like the Neverly or the Concord. And they had these shows going on all the time. Did you hear about them?
Yeah, I remember the cat. Yes, everybody talks about the Catskills.
So he would go with his cousin Mo, who was like 70-something at the time, snow white hair. And and his other brother, and the three of them would sit down at a table and start playing poker. And this doctor would come by who's on vacation, and it'd be 3 against 1. And that's what he was doing.
Okay, so what does this have to do with your Colombian connection?
He was my connection. He got me in touch with this other Jewish fellow. His name was Isaac. He lived in Boca Raton. And he had something to do with sewing machines, but he also owned 3 freighters. And he said, are you interested in working, with Isaac? And I said, sure. I had what I went out and bought, which was a mistake. I bought a 70-foot or 72-foot Fed ship. And the Fed ship, I fell in love with it. It was the Cadillac, the Rolls Royce of all yachts. It was made in Holland. And in 56, it sold for $550,000. And I got it from the estate sale from Guido Grasso from Connecticut for $50,000. His wife just wanted to get rid of it.
Wow.
It was sitting on dry dock. It was, back then they put cotton between the strips of teak on the deck.
Okay.
And then a little bit of filler. And everything went through and just completely destroyed the boat. So nowadays you can just put in putty.
So now you've got a yacht to go out and meet the ships in the Long Island
So
Sound.
all I needed was a place to offload.
Okay, I see. And then, so these Jewish guys are the ones that have the connects with the Colombians.
Yeah, with
Okay,
Isaac.
got it. So you actually never connected yourself with the Colombians at this time?
No, before they gave me anything, I had to fly down to Medellin. That's where he was from.
Okay.
And him and this guy, Raul, Silvio, who was his bodyguard, and another guy, I don't want to mention his name. He's...
Whatever.
Yeah.
It's fine. Okay, so you went down and actually met the plugs in Medellin.
Yeah, they sat down with me. We had coffee, and we just, gave him my driver's license. I had phony ID.
Yeah.
It was easy back then.
Of course.
So, I came back, and then they said, okay, this is what we're going to do. Howard's going to be the man that tells you where to be and when and what channel to go on.
Wow.
So all I needed to do, back then you didn't have satellite communication. What we had was a LORAN, and it beamed out to different locations, and then it would give you, it would triangulate things and give you a reading within, I would say, 100 and 150 feet of where you are in the ocean. And that was good enough.
Right.
And he handed me a CB. He said, you go on this channel. It's only got a 5 or 6 mile range.
Right.
Single sideband, skips over waves and can go 1,000 miles.
Yeah.
So that was great.
And tell us how the ship, this was interesting. You were telling me about how this ship, instead of when it got to America, unloading, it had different stops.
Yeah.
Like it had guys like you, these Colombians had guys like you all over the eastern seaboard, all the way up to Canada. And they would make drops and keep dropping as they moved south.
First drop was up by Maine.
Yeah. So they went all the way north to Maine and then came south
they
instead
went
of the
on
other way
outside
around.
instead of the inside.
Right.
Went way out, dropped off in Maine, came down, hit Boston. I was the next stop. And then they hit the Carolinas, maybe Georgia, Florida after that. I don't know.
Wow. Okay. So you were second stop.
Third stop.
Third stop.
Yeah.
Wow. And you were the only one in that area in New York with this connect, right?
With this guy. There was, at the time, this was like early. There's only two other people I knew in the New York area. There could have been more. But I only knew 2 other people that were smuggling weed into Long Island or New York or New Jersey. So
you were so early in the business.
Everything was in Florida.
Yeah.
And it was like Cowboy Central down there.
Yeah.
And I got to remind me later. I got another story about that.
So New York's wide open.
It's wide open. It's a freebie, unless you just up.
Yeah.
And I almost up.
Well, how much pot were you getting?
40,000 pounds.
Wow.
And I needed another boat, so I got this Palmer Johnson, another big yacht. The Palmer Johnson was cool because it didn't roll because I had a chining hole. And it's about water displacement. So they made the round bottom, it was easier to get through a water displacement, but it rocked and rolled, and picture it rocked and rolling with 40,000 pounds. I said, wow, this is going to be serious if it's a heavy sea.
Did you know you were getting 40,000?
Yeah.
Okay, so you would place the orders beforehand.
Yeah. I was from the desert. I knew nothing about boats.
Right.
I went there and I learned a lot, man.
Yeah.
And we got this guy that had a boatyard, and that was the big piece. We had to get the boatyard. And there was one, we had to make sure no one was living aboard any other boats.
Right.
And if there were, they weren't going to be there.
Right.
But I paid the guy, $200,000 just to use his, boatyard.
Wow.
And he could I'll say, I'll never rat you. I'll say it. And I was just cowboying it.
And that's where you were going to unload.
Yeah, except it was the Great South Bay on Long Island. And it's notoriously shallow. But I checked it out. I looked at the draft of my Fed ship, and I thought, sure. But the weight brought it down even more. So I got within 10 feet of getting into the boatyard. So what I had to do was the Palmer Johnson, I stuck it at the end of the outermost part of the dock and brought the Fed ship right up to it. It was called the Peregrine. And we had to unload. It was just twice the work. Unload the Fed ship onto the Palmer Johnson, onto the dock. It was like, God, it was
Yeah.
exhausting.
How many people were working for you?
I didn't have enough for that because of that, not being able to get all the way in. I had 5 on the boat and I had 4 on the shore.
And these are all local guys that you know?
Yeah, all high school guys.
Wow. So you're unloading 40,000 pounds. How much is each pound? What are you paying per pound for 40,000?
You see, I was getting most of it on the arm from Isaac.
Yeah.
I could have used the money and bought it for cash, but Isaac wanted to make money too.
Right.
So it was like an 11,000 pound profit, gross
Yeah.
profit.
Yeah.
I would say I ended up with $1.5 million in my pocket.
Yeah. Okay.
And I paid the captain $200,000. I paid each guy that worked on it $50,000. And the truck driver I gave, they were friends. I made sure they were going to have good lives. I was generous.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah. So
And that's one run.
that was one run, but I should have gotten caught. I don't know how I didn't get caught
Yeah.
because I came through the cut and you're right there at Fire Island and the Coast Guard station's right there.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't think of the water line. That's another thing I learned. It was underwater.
Right.
You got the boot cap. It's usually about this far above.
It's because you have so much pot in
Yeah.
it. It's literally
It
pushing
went
the
down.
boat down. It's like sinking the boat almost.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we got it off. And I said, this is it for the Fed ship. I
Yeah.
went out and I bought an 83-foot trawler.
A trawler.
Yeah.
Okay.
Could hold 40. I didn't need 2 boats.
There you
Held
go.
it all.
Nice. How much does a trawler cost back then?
125,000.
Yeah.
It was almost brand new.
How long did it take you to move a 40,000 pound load?
I moved it quick. I actually sat there one day and I said, how do people smoke all this?
Yeah.
Now, I told you about Virginia. Those mountain boys, they couldn't get enough weed.
Yeah.
I would put half the load, 20,000 pounds, and it would make a stop in West Virginia and in Huntington, and then it would go on to Seattle, and Seattle to Canada and
Yeah.
Alaska.
So now you're not driving anymore.
No.
You're too big time. You got bigger responsibilities getting these huge loads.
Coordinating all this was a lot of work, man.
For sure. For
All
sure.
of a sudden, it's just not me. I got like 17 people sometimes working for me.
Wow.
Sometimes I didn't trust people, right? Like I
Right.
said, I would come by with a rental truck. I'd make everybody, I said, whatever you're doing, you got to drop what you're doing, even if you're eating dinner, and get in the truck. I locked them all in the back of the truck. I didn't want them to see where we were unloading.
Wow. Now, did your driver, after he made all of these stops around the country, did he then come back with cash?
He came back, bought cash, and then my friend, Corey, Seattle, he would just, ship the rest of he'd bring the rest of the money back.
Yeah.
We had a pilot in Seattle that was great. His name was, he's probably dead by now.
He is.
His name was Larry.
Oh, Larry, he's dead. Yeah.
He had a Cheyenne 2. What a plane. Turboprop. It was beautiful, man. It was a corporate jet, and he was hired by a big corporation to fly them around.
Yeah.
And he would fly. I had to go with him. We went into Chilliwack Airport into Canada. It was right through the mountain range.
Yeah.
And it was about maybe 90 miles from Vancouver, maybe 60. I can't remember. But Chilliwack was the place. What we did is we went through the mountain peaks. And that guy could fly, man. It was all clouds, and he was I saw like off the wing, I saw, like sides of cliffs, and it was insane. And we landed in Chilliwack and we went through customs.
And you're loaded?
No, we
Okay.
went through dry.
I
And
see.
I had all my photography equipment. And I said, we're photographers. We're going to do a lot of road trips around, flight trips,
Yeah.
filming.
Yeah.
And they said, oh, no problem. And then we went out cruising around. Then we snuck back through the mountains and went and loaded up and brought it back the same exact
I
way.
see. I
and
see.
then we unloaded it, right?
Yeah.
Customs were still there,
Wow.
but they weren't looking at us
Right.
because we were already cleared.
Right. So then after you get your money back, how long do you have to get Isaac his money? Because back in the day, most of this pot from South America was fronted. It was on the arm, as you say.
He was a pain in the ass. you know.
Yeah.
He was always like calling up worried. Where's the money? Where's the money? But I gave it to him when we got it.
Yeah.
I said, you kill me, you're not going to get anything.
Right.
You know?
So it sounds
Just
like
relax. And then his confidence built,
Mm-hmm.
and he trusted me.
Mm-hmm.
So
how long does it take to turn around from the minute you unload the pounds in Long Island to getting all the money back?
several weeks.
It's a several week turnaround.
Yeah.
So then how many drops were you doing? One a month?
Well,
I'm sorry. How many unloading? How many ships? How often are the ships coming up with loads?
I did maybe 3 trips a season.
Okay.
You
Okay.
know? Well, when I did the offloading, I did 4. But when I started going all the way down myself, it was like 3.
Okay. So you start going all the way down. So you just keep building this thing.
Yeah.
You keep building and building and building.
It was a steady progression.
Yeah.
From being at the Elegant Pool Room selling dimes of hash to where I was at the moment.
So what made you say, I want to go down to Colombia now? I've got the connect. He drops off 40,000 pound loads at my back door. Now I want to go down there. Is it for a better price? Like what would make you want to take that kind of risk?
Independence, it was also, remember I told you I like to be on the road?
Yeah.
It was like going down there. It was a long way. It was 12, 13 days down, 12, 13 days back.
You take a ship down there?
Yeah.
You take your trawler?
The trawler.
Wow.
Yeah, we had to, get extra fuel on top of it. We
Yeah.
had a 20,000 gallon tank, and I still didn't trust it. I put in an extra auxiliary tank.
And how many people did you have on the trawler?
There was 4 of us.
Okay.
I was not the old man in the sea. Okay, let's make that clear.
Yeah.
I hired the captain from McAllister Tugboat Line in New York Harbor. And then there was another guy that went to Schuyler University, I believe, by City Island. It was a nautical engineering school. He was a graduate, so if anything went wrong with the engine,
Yeah.
it was going to get fixed.
Wow.
I had it covered.
So you had experts.
Oh, yeah. I didn't care. I gave him the money, and I wanted results, man.
I love the times back then were so corrupt. It's like you have these legitimate people who are like, oh, you want to pay me a couple $100,000 to bring back huge federal amounts of pot? Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, as long as you're paying me. Like, try that now,
I wouldn't try it now. Before any of this
no shit.
happened, I went to my attorney, Gerald Lefcourt in New York, and he was a big-time attorney. He was great. He was the head councilman for the Black Panthers. He was with Abby Hoffman.
Yeah.
He was big-time. And I said, all right, Jerry, I'm giving you some money down, because this girl, Monica, and the way I found him, who did the Night of the Living Dead? George Romero. They recommended him.
Okay.
And they loved heroin. So
Heroin.
we were doing heroin.
Wow.
And he was doing that movie for like $25,000, $30,000. The first Night of the Living Dead. Well, anyway, he told me to go see Jerry. So I go see Jerry, and I give him like $10,000 down as a retainer.
Yeah.
And I said, tell me something. If I smuggle marijuana, over 1,000 pounds, what is it? What is cocaine? What is heroin? What is pills?
Mm-hmm.
And he said, well, the weed, any amount, is only 0 to 5 years. No, that was for heroin. I'm sorry. It was a 5-year straight sentence.
For any amount of heroin.
No, of weed.
Okay, so any amount of weed was a 5-year bid.
And back then they had a parole board, so it was a guideline system where you got 24 to 36 months with a max out of 39 months.
Right. So you could be out in 2 years.
Yeah.
You could have a gajillion pounds of weed.
Yeah.
You could be out in 2 years. No brainer.
Yeah. And the coke, he said, it's a 20-year sentence, but they're going to nail you for 60 years with this.
Right.
For selling, for racketeering, they're going to try to get you every way they can.
Yeah.
So I never got with coke or heroin.
Yeah.
And they were bootlegging Quaaludes back then. Quaaludes was a big deal.
Yeah. Loops.
I loved those when they were around.
Oh, trust me. That's one of my biggest regrets was never being around during the lewd era.
Well, they had 50-gallon oil drums loaded with Quaaludes.
Yeah.
And, they're bootlegs.
Where did they come from?
They made them in Colombia.
Right.
They got themselves a chemist and they made them.
Wow.
Pressed them out. The problem was you do one, you'll get slightly high. You do another, and you just load it.
Yeah.
There was no uniformity.
I see. So you passed on that.
Oh, yeah. That
On that
pills were
opportunity.
60 years, too.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. So there you go. You keep doing what you're doing. Pot.
Yeah.
It's pot.
Yeah.
So now you've got your trawler, you've got your crew, you've got a lot of money behind you, you got all your connects, everything's in place, you got your buyers in the States, and you got your plug, your growers in Medellin. Tell us about the process. How would you go all the way down there? Where would you go? How much would you pick up? And what were the routes you took to get back?
Okay. I didn't want to go through Florida. That was a no-no. That's going on the inside. You're going through the Mona Passage by Puerto Rico and Dominican Republic.
Uh-huh.
And then you're going up the coast. And, I thought it was suicidal, but a lot of people did it, and they got away with it for years.
Yeah.
But I went on the outside and went way out and went out in the ocean and came around. That's why I had extra fuel tanks.
But how'd you get down? The trip going down to Colombia.
Oh, I took the inside going down.
Okay. You're going down, and now do you have cash on you?
Yeah.
Okay. What are you taking down there? Are they fronting you? Or are they giving
No,
you?
I'm giving them like $250,000 up front.
Okay.
And that's covering the size of the weed anyway.
Yeah.
But, I was getting better quality weed. That's why I was paying Isaac like $45 a pound down there,
Yeah.
And plus I was getting him a piece of the action if I was going to take it for 2 weeks,
Yeah.
and he was going to give it to me on the arm for 2 weeks.
Right. Okay.
So don't ask me the exact numbers.
Because
It's
45 is pretty expensive. We know that from talking to guys like you from that
Yeah.
era. They would $10 was about the good wholesale bottom price.
depending on how much you were buying,
Right.
like the guy that was doing like 30 million pounds.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was getting it for $10 because he's
Yeah.
doing so much.
Did they
know?
give you any like scales? Like, did they say once you hit this amount, we'll give you a price break? Like, did you do any
No,
haggling with the Colombians?
I haggled about quality.
Okay.
And that's
more
why
important.
I was paying 45.
I see.
I said, Isaac, this shit is commercial. That was the like Mexican dirt weed,
Yeah.
that we call the Colombian, commercial.
Yep.
I couldn't sell it for 175 in New
Okay.
You'd
So you'd rather pay more
Yeah.
for higher quality and maybe bring back a little less quantity.
Yeah. No, same quantity, but just
pay
higher
more.
quality, man.
Right.
Boom, the cash is right there.
Okay.
You're eliminating a month of
Yeah.
getting your money back.
Right. Right.
Because you got competition.
Yeah.
Like that other guy, he's bringing all that shit in. He's bringing gold and red bud and,
Yeah.
he's competing.
Yeah.
So I have to compete against people like that.
So is it Colombian gold that you're buying?
A few trips, yes. And then he had some from the mountains he wanted me to try.
Okay.
And that stuff was really good, man.
Nice. Nice.
It was like a dark green, dark rusty color. And it was just really good.
Okay, so
really
where
nice
where
high.
would the trawler dock? Where would you pick up?
In Colombia?
Yeah.
In Maracaibo.
Maracaibo.
He had a place, that's a little village, and they would roll, it was notorious to be shallow water, but he found a place, and they would roll out this dock, and they would bring us the bales.
Now, I don't know if we can look this up. I could be wrong. Is Maracaibo not in Venezuela?
It's Venezuela.
It's Venezuela.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, so it's super remote up there.
Yeah. Well, actually, Maracaibo was a city. We were like just north of Maracaibo.
Okay, so you're actually going to Venezuela.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, Isaac originally, that's where his boats were docked,
Right.
in Venezuela.
So the Colombians would move their loads from the north, like the Santa Marta
Yeah.
region, and then they would
No,
move them.
not Santa Marta. I was getting them from the mountains, and I was getting it.
Which mountains? There's a lot of mountains in
Oh
Colombia.
God, what do you call it? I forgot the name. the Nevada, I don't know. It was, if you look, there's two strips of mountains coming down.
Right.
Now there's the valley that goes towards, where they plant a lot.
Yeah.
And then you go, that's a lower elevation of planting.
Right.
But if you go higher up in the hills, you're going to get better weed,
I see.
in the elevation.
Yeah.
Now they had to cross, over into Venezuela.
I see. Okay.
But to get to Santa Marta is probably the same distance.
Right. Okay. So your connects that were based in Medellin their people harvested the weed in the mountains and then actually shipped it over the border and then got it straight to you guys on the
I
coast.
would never take a load without looking at it.
Right.
I will look at it all over, man.
So how many pounds of weed would you have to inspect? You'd go through a whole...
10 random bales.
Wow. Okay.
But they're pretty uniform. And then, he knew I was really fussy. If I got it up there and it wasn't what it's supposed to be, he knew he wasn't getting his money for a long time.
Right.
So he's a businessman.
Right. And he must have loved you. So how much are you picking up?
40,000.
40,000.
Well, Medellin was really a trip, man, back then, before Escobar.
Mm-hmm.
When I was there, Escobar was ripping off refrigerators and air conditioners.
Right.
Down
That's
in
right.
Cali, I think. Up in Cali. But,
yeah, this is before the cocaine cartels. So it's really just different weed conglomerates. That's what Colombia was before cocaine. It was these different, it was kind of like Mexico.
You had the coke, but not in the abundance.
No.
The market wasn't built up yet.
Right. So,
it was still a bad thing in New York if you were snorting coke. It was
bad thing?
A bad thing back in the 70s. Not a lot of people were doing it like that.
I thought it was the Surgeon General said coke was nothing to worry about. I think it was. Well, I think it was a good thing. It meant you had money.
It became that way.
Okay.
In the later 70s. But I'm talking like in the earlier 70s, you're a bad person if,
really?
doing heroin, doing coke. Not everyone did it.
Yeah. Well, yeah, of course not. So you go to Maracaibo, you dock in Maracaibo. It took you about 2 weeks to get down there?
No, 2 weeks.
Wow. You got all your food and provisions on board. You're all stocked up.
We had 7,000 gallons of water tank, over 20,000 gallons. I don't know how big. I never measured the auxiliary gas tank that the engineer put in, but we could be out for a month and not run out of fuel.
Wow. Okay.
Probably 6 weeks, to be honest. with the extra fuel.
Yeah. So how does it work when you get down there? Do you actually get on land to inspect everything?
The first time we were coming in, I didn't know what to expect. I left something off which was interesting, how I got there. Can I step back one step?
Sure.
Okay, I'm doing the offload. One of the last ones, the fourth one, the captain calls me up and he tells me to come up to the bridge. I go up there. And he says, no more. If you got playboys, hustlers, and, sneakers, no more hustlers, because the guys end up, looking at them and playing the whole way home. So the sneakers were okay because they were barefoot. But he said, look, go back to Medellin. They want you to go all the way down. Can you do that? So that's what got me to go down. And he was a German captain, and he's the one that told me that's what you got to do. He said that's where the money's at.
Yeah.
So he liked me. We did okay, man.
Right. So how much more profit did you stand to make from going down there as opposed to just offloading it in New York?
I was paid a flat $1 million a trip in New York for offloading.
Okay.
And, I took care of my people, so there wasn't much in my pocket. I had to pay the boat yard, and I had to, it's expensive running boats, repairing boats. Mm-hmm. And, it was the 70s. You could buy a Ferrari then for like $27,500.
Yeah.
So the money we're making was insane.
Yeah. Yeah. So how much more are you making bringing it back from Colombia?
I was sticking $1.5 million in my pocket in profit.
Wow.
Now, I didn't get it in one lump sum. It was
No,
always
of course.
floating somewhere around the country.
Right, exactly.
But at the end of the day, I was making off the offload maybe 300,000. They paid us $1 million. I took care of my boys.
Yeah.
I was making 300,000.
Okay.
So that's quite a incentive to go back down and do it for yourself.
So you 4x your money basically.
Yeah.
Going down there. Okay. So yeah, tell us how it works when you get down to Maracaibo.
We got attacked. The whole village was going. "Argh."
Really?
I went to my brother. He was next to me. I said, "God, they're gonna they're gonna put us in a pot and boil us."
Right.
I didn't know what they wanted. Then all of a sudden, they roasted a pig for us, and I met the police chief.
Wow.
And the priest came and he blessed the boat. I said, "What is this?"
No way.
Yeah, it was just a crappy little village.
Yeah.
But they had, inland more. It was more populated. But, we had to go to a warehouse to examine the weed, and that's where they kept it. But they were all making money, man. And they were like, Venezuela they were dirt poor, man.
Yeah. So did your Medellin connects meet you there, or did they have like a helper there? Who met you when you first got down
Silvio.
there?
He was Isaac's bodyguard.
Okay.
He was always jealous of me, because he liked being the hombre.
Mm-hmm.
He wanted to be his right-hand man. And he was like, he was a bad dude.
Okay. So then, and then they load them onto trucks and send the trucks to the boat.
They bring it to the little huts on the beach, and they rolled out the dock.
Yeah.
And they had manpower, man. They just loaded them up.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's like a goddamn movie. Just watching your bales getting loaded.
Yeah.
And you're not fronted. You're paid. You're cash on delivery.
I put $250 up front.
Okay. What's
So-
the whole load worth? To them? Like how much do you owe them?
Well, the gross was probably 40,000 times, say 250 on an average from what I would get. What does that come out to? 10, $11 million?
Mhm.
Something like that.
Okay. So
And
then the next time you
I
come,
owed them $7 million.
Mhm.
So I came out with $4 million,
Okay.
roughly.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry, I didn't write this down. This is like 50 years ago.
Okay. So you're getting quite a lot on credit.
I'm paying. He's got nothing to lose except his ship. That 250.
I'm talking about the Colombians. You owe them $7 million.
Yeah, that's because they're like partners.
Yeah.
I wouldn't get the weed I was getting without it.
Right. So then you would bring down the next run.
Yeah.
You would bring them down 7 million plus whatever you're going to put down for the next load.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So tell us about the load on the way back. You go way around.
Go on the outside.
Yeah. Tell us what the outside means.
Outside's just open ocean, man. It's beautiful. You don't see land. You see more stars than you could ever imagine. And sometimes the seas got, what I liked about it is the distance between the waves get longer. It's like you get close to shore and they start compacting.
Yeah.
And, we hit some bad weather sometimes. And, it was pretty challenging. I looked at my brother. I said, Bobby, if the Coast Guard came, I think they'd be saving us right now.
Yeah, right.
It was hard.
Wow.
I had to tie myself into the wheelhouse because it would start throwing you around. He couldn't even stand next to me. And, we went on 4-hour shifts.
And where are the bales?
Bales are down in the fish storage.
Yeah. Did you ever feel like water was going to come into the boat and damage them?
No.
Okay.
No, we didn't get in that big a sea.
Okay.
You got to be careful with some of the waves. There are swells. I never hit any broke. I was lucky. You can get, the wind can really tear up the ocean, and you get that water coming in. It was a rolling sea most of the time. You throttle up and then throttle down on the backside and make sure the angle's right. When I first started doing it, I remember I buried the front light of the bow. And, it's a technique you learn over time.
How long did it take you to get back?
Same amount. Took about 13 days.
Okay. And then do you get back? Where do you unload?
Okay. Couldn't unload at
The
Great
old-
South Bay anymore.
Right. That spot's
Because that
compromised.
trawler, I think, was 8-9 feet to draft, maybe. So that was out, way
Yeah.
out of the question. I found a guy that was the manager and maintenance man for an estate in the Pocomoke Bay. And you know how Long Island has the North Fork and the South Fork? In between is like Gardiner's Island and the Shelter Island, and that's the Pocomoke Bay. And I found a very wealthy man that had this huge estate, and I gave the guy, some good cash, and he returned his back. And I had my aunt, who lived next door to me growing up. Her husband died, and left her in debt. I rented a house on the water, and it had, like neighbors, but not close. So that was my backup. I had 2 houses.
Wow.
The other was so just perfect.
Yeah.
It had
And you had no trouble coming in
deep
from
water. It was perfect.
and you had no trouble from Coast Guard on
No.
your way in?
No.
Wow. So you literally just pull up to a residential home.
Yeah.
Couldn't be easier.
It was an estate.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. And then you just unload. Do you have your drivers there?
No.
Who's meeting you?
That was an island.
Oh, I see.
And I'm getting very specific now. I don't want to, it was an island in the Pocomoke, and what we did was take it by van. Little by little, we took it across to East Hampton, and there was no worry. It was safe where it was.
Yeah. Wow. You never had a load get ripped off?
No,
Or
I
lost?
never got ripped off.
Did you ever have to throw a load over the boat?
No.
Never had to ditch any bales?
I
Wow.
don't know why they did that. They would open up the seacocks in some of these boats and sink them. And
Yeah.
then marijuana floats, man. It goes
Yeah.
right up to the top.
Well,
They're going
you
to
know.
get you anyway.
Okay. So how long did you work like this? Going all the way down there?
From 77 to 80.
Wow. That's a long time. So
I only did like 3 trips a year.
Okay.
I stopped going on the boats. I just couldn't do it.
Yeah.
It drove me crazy.
So you started sending somebody else?
Yeah, the captain.
For you?
Yeah.
Okay, so you would just let the captain go down there and handle
Yeah,
it.
it was working itself at
Right.
that point.
Wow. Oh, so you made millions of dollars between
Yeah.
these years. Wow, that's wild. So between these, are you doing how many runs? One a month, I guess? 'Cause
No, it was more than one a month. I split up that one every 2 months. It'd take 2 months to basically before I'd go down again. The growing season, I would fit 3 in: the beginning, the middle, and the end. I just didn't want to overdo it.
Right.
And everybody else was going like cowboy and everything.
Yeah.
It was hard. I from my childhood, man. Like I told you, I don't trust.
Yeah.
And then I want to always know my limitations.
But you're balling and you're still a heroin addict.
Today?
No, during this time.
Yeah.
Wow. But is it starting to wear you down, or do you still look
No,
and
I would
behave functionally?
I would get clean, I
Yeah.
would go and use it for a week, get sick for a couple of days. Sometimes I'd go for 3 months and get sick for a couple of days.
Right.
But, I kept having breaks. When I went to prison, that was the longest I could have got it there, but I didn't want to do it there.
Yeah. So you got caught with, we're going to move through a little bit because it's a long story, but basically you got caught at a dope house with a small amount of heroin that you were using for personal use.
Going there to buy a gram of heroin, and it was on Woodhaven Boulevard
Which is where?
in Queens.
Queens, right? Yeah.
This is all you can look it up on the internet.
But you went and took a pinch and did time, like prison time over.
Totally my mistake, man. As careful as I was, as like weird as I was about trusting people, heroin got me,
Yeah.
It took me down.
Isn't that so? You never took a pinch in all these years from massive weed smuggling. It
But-
was just
It was just personal heroin use that got you locked up. Now, when was that first arrest?
That was May 13th, 1 o'clock in the morning. I remember it, all 13th. 13th hour, 13th day. It was 1980, and it was the day the Pope got shot.
Oh, really?
That was another way to remember it.
John Paul II. One.
I don't know. I'm not that religious.
Okay. So, and then is that what brought this smuggling run to an end?
Yes, because I got 5 years.
5 years for 1 gram of heroin.
There is more to the story.
Sure.
The guy didn't want to mention his name. He switched from marijuana to becoming a member of the Medellin cartel. And he was doing he was doing weed in the beginning, then he did coke.
Was this a white guy?
Yeah. No, he was Colombian.
He was a Colombian guy, but you were working with him down there.
Yeah.
Okay.
And he was in with Isaac.
Okay.
And they paid everything off. It was so safe,
Yeah.
you know. No one ever had a gun, you know. It was like, I never carried a gun.
Yeah.
Only later I carried a rifle because they pirates in the Bahamas, they started ripping people off of their boats. I wasn't, to steal a boat to go do a run.
Right.
And they were killing people.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I never had, if I was getting pulled over, I would get rid of the gun.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't, But in May, that May bust, I was with Milagros her name's Millie. Milagros was a Dominican girl. Mm-hmm. And she came from a very upper class family in the Dominican Republic. And I took her with me at different places, different times, because she knew the language. Mm-hmm. I never did learn Spanish in all those years. And she'd always tip me off to what they're saying.
Right.
So she was with me, and I walked in through the door, and here was the DEA. I had a gun just stuffed into the side of my neck right here, get down on the floor, and right away I knew it was either a ripoff or it was the cops, and it turned out to be the DEA. I remember asking him, you state or federal? And I was hoping for federal. And he said DEA. And what happened was I was going there, and the trips I made to that apartment previous to that bust, there was a couple of guys that were always hanging around, and one guy was Pepe, another guy was Ron, and he, and the guy Cooch, I call him Cooch, and he had a bandana around his head, and I said, what happened to you? Oh, my roommate, man. I apologize for the F-bomb. He put a gun on my head, and he was going to rip me off, and the bullet split between his skin and his skull and went like this.
Lucky duck.
Yeah. He was in the courtroom with me. I wanted to push it all the way in. Because, the prosecutor goes and said, and look at Mr. Cooch. He's got a bullet in his head. And the whole jury goes. But what happened is they arrested all of us, right? And what they try to do is get you all in one case, because they call it spillover of evidence. All they have to do is show one person that's really dirty and everyone's guilty, if by association. And that's kind of what happened.
Okay.
And then I pick up the Daily News, and some guy, with Ron that was in my co-defendant that I didn't know, they were accused of killing 2 bartenders at the Shamrock Bar in Queens. And I guess they were pros. They just boom, 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 and Ron shot one in the ceiling and left. And what do you get? You get 100 different IDs when you shoot one into the ceiling on your way out. Mm-hmm. But Gotti's niece, or
John Gotti,
his niece was in there, right? And this guy was a foot soldier in his family.
Okay.
And I didn't know that. It was all news to me.
Yeah.
And she actually was, and the bartender was her boyfriend. So she was really pissed.
Right.
And she was going to help identify the people.
Right.
Gotti called her and said, don't do it.
Right.
So she took back her testimony. This is all, you can look it
Okay,
up.
so what? And this is one of the guys that's lumped into your case. One of these shooters.
Yeah. And Pepe wasn't there for the bust, and he was like, AKA Pepe, you know, he was a fugitive. So they were looking for him.
Okay. So you guys are, and they were just watching this dope house and trying to put a case on the dealers, and then you happen to be there. Is that how they lumped everybody together?
From what I understand, the guy Herbie, that was his apartment. He was selling ounces of pure heroin, man, and that's how he got the heat. This was pure.
Yeah.
You know, it was, you know, I think it was 86% or something, but they never saw anything like it. Wow. And it brought the heat.
It's just very shocking. Nowadays, you would never, if they catch you with a gram of heroin in downtown LA, they're going to write you a ticket.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Well, I had cops in the streets of New York give it back to me. You know?
Oh, really?
Yeah, if I got, you know, it comes in a little cellophane envelope with a stamp on it.
Yep.
And all they want to do is each drug house in New York City had their own, like Mercedes, or they stamped it different names. They kept track. If some really good shit hit the street and people were dying, they know where to go.
Right.
So he took it, wrote it down, gave it back to me.
Wow.
But what I did learn is...
So why do you think they took you in that time?
Well, I got my discovery evidence.
Yeah.
You know, I went to jail and to the MCC in New York, and they, you know, my lawyer, I couldn't get out. They raised my bail twice. You know, they wouldn't let me out. They just began f***ing with me.
Yeah.
And so finally, left court said, you got to call your mom on this one. I said, no, you call her. So they later said, I know why. But I got out after 3 weeks, but I was on the 11th floor of the MCC with all these idiots, you know, from that apartment. And they were just trouble.
It doesn't make any sense. I don't know why they're f***ing with you like this. I still don't get it. Do you think they had a suspicion of who you were and what you were doing?
They had discovery. They knew. They mentioned me saying I was the mastermind behind a huge marijuana distribution network in the Oregon, Washington area, you know, centered in Seattle.
Interesting.
And then I was doing loads from Medellin. I was doing, people would take a pinch and they would do anything to get out.
Right.
And also, I didn't know. They didn't have enough on me, so they knew. And they
but
were
your
aware.
name was still in a file now from people getting busted and saying, hey, I'm getting it from this guy, George, on the East Coast. That's all I know.
Now, this guy, Raul, that was part of Isaac, the other guy split off, but Raul, they had a RICO case on him, and they needed my testimony to get him on RICO, which with mandatory life.
Yeah.
No parole, and I wouldn't cooperate. So they made my life miserable.
I see. Okay, but you did finally bail out after 3 weeks. And then how long before you took the plea deal for 5 years?
I didn't take a plea deal. The jury came back and they did a formal sentence.
So you went to trial?
Yeah.
Okay, wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
That was an interesting thing. That trial was really amazing.
Were you working when you were out on bail, or did you halt all smuggling activities?
I did one trip from Mexico to San Diego by plane while I was out, but that was the only thing.
Okay. So then you, what years were you inside?
Well, I would say I went in 81 after I was out on bail, and I got out in 85.
Okay.
Over 3 years.
Wow.
Like 3.5 years total.
Yeah. And you came home to what were your plans when you got out?
My plans sent me to a halfway house. They gave me this suit that looked like Elvis Presley wore it in the 50s. It was like the legs were halfway up to my knees, and I got out and I looked across the street, and there was the men's shelter for the Salvation Army. Yeah. And I looked down, went uptown, and there was the Empire State Building. Yeah. I said, George, the only way you can go is up from here. Yeah. CBGB's was on one corner. The Salvation Army was on the other. Hell's Angels Clubhouse was down the block. A very lively neighborhood.
Yeah. Did you have any money when you came home?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I stashed money.
Yeah, nice. Okay. So you can get back on your feet now and you're clean. You're not on dope. So what's the next move?
Got out and I tried to get a job. When I went away, one of my cellmates was Fred Richmond. He was a gay congressman from New York. And Harrison Williams was another roommate. He was the senator for New Jersey, 27 years. He got busted on Abscam back then, selling like Arabs, like citizenship.
Yeah, yeah.
So he was offered to get me a job driving a limo for him. And that didn't work. They wouldn't hire me. So then the guy said, come on, George, volunteer. You know, it was Salvation Army. They were do-gooders. All of a sudden, I was in front of Macy's ringing a bell with a red pot in front of me at Christmas time.
Do you dress like Santa?
No, I wouldn't do that. But the guy did, the do-gooder did, and I'm ringing a bell.
Wow.
You know, so I said, okay, I did my tour of duty right now.
Yeah, yeah.
So I called this guy up in the Rockaways. I said, what's going on? And he says, wow, I got something for you if you want to take it. Now, I had to be back by 10 o'clock at night. That was the curfew.
Because you're in the halfway house still.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I went to see him, and he gave me, I said, what is this shit? I said, it's not Colombian. He said, it's Mexican. And, you know, it was skunk weed. Somehow in the time I was away, in the time in Colombia, they were cultivating skunk.
That's right.
You
And
know?
skunk is the Sinsemilla.
Yeah, it was an Afghani strain, I guess. And it was amazing.
Wow.
You know, it was like, sorry, it's bad back.
So the Mexicans have figured it out.
They figured it out.
Yeah.
They lost everything and they got it back, man. They had a
Right.
monopoly because it was right there.
Right.
You know, so he gave me 50 pounds and I took a chance. I went to one of the guys that was on my boat. I said, just take it, John. And, you know, I'll be back in 3 days.
Wow.
If you don't want to, give it back.
Wow.
And next day he called me, said, you got more of this? You know, and I said, yeah.
Let's go.
So the next night I had $12,000 in my cowboy boots.
Yeah.
And my hand behind my head and said, I'm back. You know?
Wow.
I tried to do the right thing. I rang the bell, tried to get a job driving. And, you know, and I said, okay, I'm back.
You didn't try very hard.
No.
That's okay. And I'm not blaming you.
Then, like a day later, the manager of the halfway house, they had civilians being managers.
Yeah.
She comes to me and said, I'm going up to meet Bobby Jones over at Bloomingdale's. You want to come with us? And I said, all right. And, you know, there was no reason for it. And I could smell she wanted something. So she said, George, that dress is really nice. And I said, I got a dress. What's your size? And she told me the size. I said, I'll take that dress. And then she came back and told me, you don't have to come back to the halfway house until this date. After, you know, I was supposed to spend 6 months there. So she cut 5 months off.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, I wonder why she did that.
Money. I bought her a dress.
Right. That's all it took.
That's all it took. It was New York. The
Oh.
guy at the front door, the first night, he went and he said, are you clean? I said, yeah, I didn't want to be, but I am.
Uh-huh.
He said, $20, I won't UA you. I said, all right. So I was back on the juice again.
Oh, it was a better time. It was a better time. So a month out of federal prison after a 3.5-year bump, you're moving hundreds of pounds of this new Sinsemilla Mexican skunk. You're back on H, and you paid $20, and you get out of the halfway house early.
$150 for the dress.
Sure. Oh yeah, I forgot.
$20 for the guy at the door.
Man, what a country.
That's New York.
That's New
It
York
was
back
great.
in the 80s. Yeah,
I
it was
love
great.
New York.
Yeah.
You know,
God damn.
you know, it was the best.
It was better when this country was corrupt.
So I decided, all right.
So did you see something with this Mexican skunk? Did that blow your mind? You were like, oh, this is going to be a great trade.
It set off all the alarms in my head.
Right, because now I don't have to go all the way down to Colombia. The weed's better.
Back to the old Pueblo.
Right, exactly. Go back to Nogales, back to Tucson. So is that where you went?
That's exactly where I went. I started buying loads, you know, in the town. testing it out further. Sent some to Seattle, sent some to New Jersey, some to New York.
Okay.
And yeah, they were buying it.
So tell us how that economy worked. So you back in the early 70s, you were paying, $7 a pound, $5 a pound, $10 a pound for the brick. Now, what does a pound in the mid 80s of skunk cost you
in
at the border?
Tucson? I didn't go across the border yet.
Okay, in Tucson.
It was roughly anywhere from $900 to $11.50 a pound.
Wow. And that's your price. That's the
my
wholesale price. That's expensive.
Yeah.
How many were you picking up at a time?
Oh, 500 pounds.
Okay. So you had that kind of bankroll?
Yeah.
Okay.
And
Got it. And what are you flipping them for in Seattle?
33% of my money.
Wow. So what are you selling 1 pound? If you buy a pound for $900 in Tucson, what are you selling that in Seattle for?
Seattle? Well, in New York, I was getting $12.50, $13.50 a pound. Seattle, I was getting a little bit more.
Okay.
And then we were still going to Chilliwack, Canada. We eliminated Alaska.
Yeah.
Oh, God, there's a story in Alaska I should talk about.
On the Patreon. So maybe 1,500 in Canada or something?
Yeah.
Okay, good. So you're making, a good
making good money.
33, 40% margin on your money. Wow. Now, was there any quantity wise, was it consistent? Like, did you go through droughts at all on the skunk?
Well, the skunk was seasonal, just like everything else.
Yeah.
You get there too early in the year, the damn stuff was good, but they picked it too soon. It was really green.
Yeah.
And if you were out there too late, you were getting the dried out, shaky stuff.
Right.
So it was always pretty, you got really good green bud or you got skunk. It was two different kinds.
And who was your connect in Tucson?
Same old boys, Juan, and they were all Marco. They were still all there.
Marco, and they were still all working.
Yeah.
And are they bringing it over now, flying it like in the old days?
No, they never got to that. Marco actually got caught on the border with 19 trucks crossing.
Wow.
Yeah, he took a big hit. But I went back to see Senor Timmerman.
Right? Of course, you're Luftwaffe
Yeah.
Nazi.
And we started doing it again.
Okay. So now he's got the Sinsemilla.
Yeah.
And he's making flights.
Yeah, I grabbed Milagros and to take her with me, and we went to this.
That's your Dominican gal?
Yeah.
Nice. Miracles. Milagros.
She put up with a lot. But she was beautiful. She was a soap opera star for the Dominican channel in New York. And anyway, we went down to this place called Guadalajara. We met Timmerman, and we got into a rental car, and he drove us to a place. Well, we let Millie drive when we got close because she looked more like somebody from the neighborhood than we did. So the both of us had blonde hair and blue eyes. And, we get to a Paxangan, and now it's like really awful with the cartels. Mm-hmm. But back then it wasn't. And they just started getting a foothold in places, but we were lucky. We went there and we started scoping out different airstrips, and these federales came up and said, "What are you looking for?" I said, "Oh, I want to grow seedless watermelons." No such thing. Back then there weren't. Who would know? A few years later there was.
Damn, that could have been your idea, dude. That was you were the first with it.
It was funny as hell. So, for 3, you needed, this was like in the valley before the Sierra Madres.
Right.
So what we did then is, we were staying in the California, Hotel California. There was 3 buildings in the town. That was one of them.
Yes.
So for us to go to this one area, we got to climb in the back of a pickup. Now, Millie was this spoiled brat from a upper class family. Mm-hmm. They put us in there and buried us with potatoes. Millie was screaming the whole way. And we rode all the way to the foot of the Sierra Madres. And there we got our mules and we went up into the fields.
Wow.
Yeah. Because like I said, I wanted to see what I was getting, man.
Wow.
Because they switch out on you. Yeah. You look at, you like this? Yeah. Okay, it's yours. You come there, it's something else.
Right.
So I made sure. I even left my brother sitting there.
Yeah.
For like a week.
Wow.
Until we could get back.
So what did a Mexican pot field in the Sierra Madres look like?
They cut them in. They were smart, man. They cut them in strips.
Yeah.
They went, maybe 10 yards wide, maybe, and they went all the way long, and then they let the, jungle, and then they went again, and there was just long strips.
Wow.
And
Just filled with plants.
yeah, I wasn't interested in that. I wanted to see the finished product. So they showed me the finished product, man. It was just smelled like skunk, man.
Yeah.
It smoked like skunk. It was skunk weed.
It's the real deal.
Yeah, I don't know who brought the seeds. I heard stories of people getting it from Amsterdam, but it was all. The Amsterdam thing was like a ruse. You would send money to Amsterdam, but the people that had the was in the States.
Right.
But they got the seeds.
So who are your connects down there in the fields?
They were all Richard Timmermans.
Richard Timmerman's guys. Okay. So what kind of, from there, did you guys pack the planes in those foothills right before? Okay. And then you fly them. Where are you landing them in Arizona? What area?
Just north of Tucson.
Okay. And are you still just with the flashlights? So that technology is not upgraded.
Well, it's upgraded. You can't possibly do it now. They got
I know, but in 85
now. Oh yeah.
You were still doing that. Okay.
Timmerman would do anything.
Right.
He was on the top of a roof one day shooting ounces of cocaine taped to an arrow to some kid on the U.S. side. I mean, Timmerman was he was like a kid.
Wow.
He grew up a multimillionaire, but he was like a kid.
Wow.
The crazy. He wanted to build a catapult one day, and they said, "No, we're not launching bales across the border."
Just like a Nazi, always experimenting.
Yeah.
They're weird people.
Oh, but you know what his dream was? It finally came true. Going back to the original old days, he wanted to be a fire chief. So one day I wake up and there's 2 old LaFrance fire engines in my backyard. And he goes and he says, "Well, Exavia is the president now in Mexico. He won't let me in. I got to get the connections going." So I stayed there for about a month, and then all of a sudden they were gone. And I went down to visit him in Culiacan, and he was a captain of the Bombarderos.
Wow.
He redid the firehouse, 2 brand new, used fire engines, and he painted what he really wanted to do. He bought a station wagon, painted it red, and put a light up on top. He was chief.
Wow. A true psychopath. Yeah. And he's flying weed loads and shooting arrows of coke across the border. Unreal. So
you had to love the guy.
No,
though.
I love this. This is a movie character.
He was very dapper, like you'd see in a James Bond movie.
Yeah.
Just cool as hell.
So, now what are the size and frequencies of these plane loads?
We were running beach 18s, so 1,000, 1,200 pounds. We had used bladder tanks, but then we did I bought a DC-3 because the beach 18 got hot. It was like, that's hard to explain. If you saw a beach 18, you were a drug smuggler. There was an identity with that airplane.
See. Right.
It got that way from Jamaica. They used a lot of them there.
Yeah.
But the DC-3, it was a wonderful airplane, man.
Yeah.
Bought it for $35,000. I put a ton of money into it, and it was flying.
Yeah. So 1,000 pounds at $1,000 a shot. These are $1 million loads, and you're getting them off for We
were paying about $25 a pound for it.
Yeah. $25 a pound.
Yeah, but we were getting the best.
Yeah, you're right.
I wasn't buying the crap.
Yeah. So you were really moving it, and then
in Santa Marta, it was $10 to $60. If you were just me coming in, and you wanted the best of the best, it was $60. If you wanted commercial, it was $10.
Yeah.
But if you were the other guy that did the 30 million pounds, you could get the best of the best for $10.
Yeah.
And that's how it worked.
Yeah. But
I was small. He was big.
Yeah. And that's kind of one of your keys to survival too, it seems like.
Yeah.
So you're making almost $1 million a flight, and 1,000 pounds is not that much compared to, what these yahoos are doing.
Well, the 3 were bringing in 3,000.
Okay. So you would bring in as much as 3,000.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and how fast is that turning over?
The same amount of time. Wherever I took it, I had to front it, and it would take a couple weeks.
And are you back driving it?
Well, no, but I set up a different way of distributing it. I bought like a fleet of pickup trucks, and I bought these boxes. I made these sheet metal boxes, and you couldn't see over the if it slid in, it was like 18 inches high, 4 feet by 8 feet, fit in perfectly inside the bed of a pickup truck. And then I crated it, and I bought solar panels, and I put it on top of the box, and I bought controls for another little box on it. And I sold it off, and I had pamphlets made, and I had hats and jackets said Solar Tech Incorporated. And I was selling remote fence chargers. So, inside were batteries, and the panels would, charge the fences so the cattle couldn't get out at ranches. And my story was we were going to New York to the trade show, and we were going to show it.
Wow.
So I had trucks going to Seattle, some trucks going to New York.
Did you have drivers, or are you still driving?
No, I had drivers.
Okay.
No, I stopped doing that.
Did they know what they were carrying?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Because you created a completely real company. It's a fake company, but it's completely real.
It was believable.
Believable.
Yeah.
Right. Wow.
Yeah.
So you're not making the runs. Things are just working like a well-oiled machine.
Till I got busted again.
Yeah. Right. And I think this is over heroin.
Yep. It was Dallas Airport.
I got to try heroin, man. Really. I mean, enough's enough. How many years can I go?
It's too late, man. You can't do it anymore.
I know. I guess not. I'm going to go searching. That's going to be the next episode of The Connect. Johnny goes to Afghanistan to really find that
to get
brown.
You get China white there.
Kidding, of course, guys. I'm just saying,
What's on the street now?
You're fucking up a multi-million-dollar operation because you like to chase that dragon.
Yeah. It was, what? It's hard to explain what it's like to have PTSD. It's like you're always like on, until I really learned how to deal with it.
What did you have PTSD from?
Childhood stuff, and then I was kidnapped once in Colombia, and then, there's a lot of that happened, and it just adds upon it. And if you don't get regular PTSD taken care of, it turns into complex PTSD.
Right. What year did you take your second fall?
That was 1990. It was like a 10-year period. So you
got out the first time in 84. You got this about 6 years of running these loads with Timmerman.
Yeah.
Okay. And you made millions of dollars. Wow. And you're living in Tucson?
Yeah.
Okay. Are you married again?
No. I got married again, but let me see. No, I wasn't married then.
Okay. And then what happens?
What happens is Oklahoma City bombing.
That was 94.
94?
Yeah.
Changed everything. All of a sudden, I didn't want my trucks on the highway with a box that could contain fertilizer.
Okay.
So that kind of changed. The cops were looking for everything everywhere.
I see.
So that was like...
So this was actually a 10-year run from when you got out, 84 to 94. You said 84 to 90.
To 90, yeah.
What happened between...
I went to jail again in 90.
Oh, I see. Okay. So, tell us about that. What was that over? I mean, you getting high.
I got stopped I was switching planes from New York to get to Tucson. I had to switch in Dallas. And these DEA agents came up to me, and they were like a task force. They were appointed DEA, but they weren't real DEA. And they came up and they said, "You look like a hijacker, and you fit our profile, and we'd like to search you." And I said, "You can't search me. You can't search my luggage. I want to see an attorney." And he says, "Well, we can get the dogs." And that's what they ended up doing. And, anything you touch with marijuana, like skunk, is going to get transferred, man.
Yeah.
I had $250,000 of cash on me, and that stuff must have stunk too.
Totally, for sure.
And he says, "You sure you don't want me to? You want me to cut open this beautiful leather attaché case?" I said, "Yeah, go out for it. I'm not opening it." But I had a half a gram of heroin in my wallet, and I totally didn't know.
Oh my!
So they arrested me, and as soon as the dogs went crazy, and then they searched me, and that was it, man. And in Texas, they called up the U.S. attorney. He said, "Just take the money. That's all we want. Let them go." I said, "Oh, see you guys later." "Oh, no, you're not done with the great state of Texas." So the state attorney, I guess the attorney general for the state of Texas said, "Okay, arrest them, book them."
For the half a gram.
Yeah. So Frank Jackson, I went to find him. He left court recommended him. He used to play wide receiver for the Miami Dolphins, and he represented me. And it was a I figured good old boy system, ex-football player, great. Right. So yeah, they hit me with 20 years. I said, "Frank, what are you talking about? 20 years?" He said, "I'm not smuggling this. It's a half a gram."
Yeah.
And he said, "Well, this is Texas. They can do what they want." And these guys that were making methamphetamine, they got 60 years, and they went right before me in court. So I was like, next. And I was saying, "Are they coming down?" He said, "Not yet." And this is the real deal, George. But back then, 33 days counted as a year because Texas was overcrowded. Mm-hmm. So they came back and said, Johnny Black, that was his name. He was an ex-FBI agent turned district attorney. He came and he said, "Okay, I'm going to give you 10 years. You're only going to have to do, 13, 14, whatever months on that."
Right.
And I said, "I see construction over there. You're building a new facility. What happens when you have more room than you know what to do with?"
Yeah. Right.
And I said, "No way." And I said, "Look at my record. I can't stay out of trouble. I get busted for heroin every 10 years.
Yeah.
And he said, "Oh, I understand." Came back, offered me $5. He went to see the judge with Frank Jackson. And he came back, and the judge looked at me. He said, "You look like a decent kid, white kid, blonde hair, blue eyes. Mm-hmm. I think you can get a break. We'll give you 5 years. Can you stay out of trouble for like 6, you could do 6 months. Can you stay out of trouble for 4.5 years?" And I said, "I'll try." Okay. And he said, "Okay."
So in other words, for people that don't quite follow legally, it's essentially a suspended sentence. It's 6 months in jail and then 4.5 years.
Oh, another 6 months in a halfway house, and then you're on parole 4.5 years.
Right. Meaning if anything happens, you go back for the full again. 4 years. Right. Right. Okay. That makes sense.
Yeah.
And so you said, okay, I could stay out of trouble for 4.5.
Yeah.
Okay. So you went and did 6 months in a Texas state prison?
I think I did less, and they shipped me out to the halfway house.
Okay. And where was that?
It was in the Oak Lawn section of Dallas.
Okay.
It was just an old mental health. That was kind of interesting. A mental health facility. Later, I became a therapist, which was really strange.
Yeah.
And it was dark and gloomy, but, they let you out.
And these people, you're around people that have no idea the scale to which you traffic drugs.
They had discovery evidence on me.
Oh, really?
All that came back again.
Okay. So all that stuff, all the paperwork and the snitches from the 70s, they had that on file.
Yeah.
So they had their suspicions of who you were.
They sent me to Lewisburg Penitentiary. Never got arrested before. That was a level 5 the first time.
Yeah.
I had to sue to get to Allenwood, which was a camp.
Wow.
Then they sucked me on a bus for 6 months on a made up writ. And I decided to drive around the country.
Insane.
And then in Dallas, I got stabbed the second day I was there with a toothbrush. Dallas County was worse than Lewisburg Federal Penitentiary. Wow. It was crazy.
Wow.
I said, I went through all this in my life. I'm going to die from a toothbrush. It was nuts.
Did it do damage?
No, I had money. And their answer to the flu was to freeze the place. And it was so cold. I went and I bought from other inmates their blankets.
Yeah.
I bought commissary and traded cigarettes with blankets.
Yeah.
And,
Wow.
it was...
I meant the toothbrush, but yeah.
Well, you take a toothbrush, you grind it down on the concrete and turns into a sharp point. But it gets a little shorter. So it went in about an inch, but it didn't hit anything.
Okay.
And, it's just, that was it. I went to the infirmary and they told me that there's only 3 white guys in our tank of 60 people. So the one guy, thank God, hit the panic button.
Yeah.
And he got the goon squad to come.
Yeah.
They almost killed that guy that stabbed me.
Yeah, we've heard from guests about how brutal the Texas prison guards are.
Oh, man.
But wow, okay, this is...
If you're black, you're really going to have a hard time.
Yeah, but there's a lot of them, though. At least they're the majority. Wow. And all you had to do was just get off the dope, and you would have had...
That was my downfall.
I mean, this is one of the most successful marijuana storied careers that I've ever interviewed. I mean, and I've talked to a lot of people, So for 4.5 years, you have to stay out of trouble.
Yeah.
Where do you go after you get out of the Dallas halfway house?
I went to sell cars.
Now, you must have had a bunch of money saved.
Yeah.
From this run.
Yeah, but you still have to sell cars.
Run.
You got to get a job.
You got to get a job, right?
I said, well, they give you a car for free, and you show up and you sell cars.
Sure.
So I was hustling cars.
Where?
It was a Mitsubishi of Dallas and Grand Prairie of Dallas, a Ford dealership. And that was like old country Texas.
Yeah.
They were still, that was a weird place. I was glad I was white and when I was in Grand Prairie.
Yeah. Yeah.
Texas is a tough place, man.
Yeah, totally.
But I liked they had a good sense of humor, man. They had a good attitude. I liked the Texans. They treated me good.
Yeah. Yeah.
I can't say a bad thing about them, man, except that county jail sucked.
Yeah, the Texans are really nice and cool, except when you break the law. Then they go all Old Testament.
Yeah, don't
Wild
mess
West
with
on you.
Texas.
Okay, so how long did you sell cars for?
I'd say over a year.
Okay.
Then I made a phony job.
Okay.
My roommate, well, not my roommate, my office mate in the car dealership. He had a house. He was never married, and he's rented me a room for $175 a month. He became a runner for me.
Wow.
I corrupted him. But, I moved in with him, and I built this like this place, studio. And I said I'm painting custom gas tanks for motorcycles. I was always into motorcycles, and I was doing custom paint jobs. I was a good artist, and I did a couple tanks. I had them laying around, and it covered me with the PO. And PO, I was no trouble.
Yeah.
She loved me.
Piss and clean.
Yeah.
You're off dope.
Yeah, I was off dope.
Yeah.
And then I went back. I started buying loads again, but doing it small time, just in the trunk of a car and sending my roommate to New York. He loved it.
Wow. So now all this time that you're away from the game, you still maintain your contacts for buyers and your suppliers.
Yeah, I wasn't crossing the border anymore. I was doing everything in Tucson.
Right. But you still I'm saying, like, did you have to establish new connections every time you came back from prison, or did you have
these
enough
guys
suppliers?
were lifelong, man.
They were lifelong, right?
From 1970s.
So you knew them. There was no problem. You'd always be able to get in touch with some guy when you were ready to start working.
Yeah, that
again.
guy Jim who sat next to the cactus.
Yeah.
He fell asleep. He was still there.
And then your buyers up in Seattle and New York.
They were still there.
They were still there. So
everything was intact.
Would you let them know, hey, I'm in prison.
Yeah.
I'll hit you when I'm out.
Yeah.
And then you would call them when you were ready to work. God damn.
Yeah.
Lifers.
I did everything the right way, except I did heroin.
Yeah. Okay. So this was like you told me this period from like 95, 96, your last run. This was like your retirement.
Yeah. I was like, I could see the handwriting on the wall, and I stopped doing everything. And I was sitting and I bought a warehouse in Dallas, and I started like teaching, some kid came up and he graduated the art school or academy of Dallas. He didn't know how to draw. So I taught him to draw. And all of a sudden I had 10 people coming and we're hiring models. And what better living having a nude model and teaching people how to draw, man.
Wow.
You know, I did that, and then I started getting old, and I said, I got to do something with my life, man. And, you know, with some help from people's ideas and suggestions, you know, on the drug problem I had, why don't you go to school, get your master's, and become a therapist?
And are you still running loads as you're going back to school?
No, I stopped.
Do you remember your last load and what went through your mind to make you say, okay, I'm done?
Yeah, the car got pulled over you know, on the way back to New York twice. And I said, that's unusual, man, you know. And they didn't check the trunk. It was right there in the trunk.
How much did you have?
Except my roommate looked like the biggest dork you could ever imagine.
Well, you want a dork.
This guy would stop at a motel, and I'd get in the other room. I'd go in the next morning. He had all these picture frames of these girlfriends, these fat girlfriends, you know, and it's like all around his bed, you know. And he had shorts with socks up to here, you know, halfway up to his knee. And I mean, you couldn't ask for a better driver.
No, of course.
I mean, he was perfect.
So you would make these runs with him?
I would fly there, and he'd make them.
Okay. So he got pulled over a few times. How much work would you bring back at a time? How much work would he have?
I would only take like 200 pounds, maybe.
Yeah.
Just, you know, I couldn't sit still. I had to, you know, I had to create. I like to create.
You like to create. You liked working.
Yeah.
There's no question about that. Your identity and your self-esteem, I think, is that safe to say, was built into you running pot?
You know, I'm going to give you a bit of psychology right now.
Okay.
After 25 years of being a therapist, I learned something which I didn't know earlier. When every behavior, human behavior, can be explained through acquiring new or like increasing or maintaining self-esteem and competence.
Right.
So when, you know, psychologically, competence means how does this person adapt himself to their world? And then how does that person get and manipulate their world to get what they need? So I didn't get a lot of, you know, guidance, didn't get like, I wasn't going to be a doctor or a lawyer. When smuggling came about, I just took it. It was a progression in my life of ways of maintaining competence and not losing it and increasing it where I could.
And increasing your self-esteem.
Yeah.
You're doing esteemable actions.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. As an outlaw, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Where'd you go to school to get your degree?
I went to Phillips Graduate Institute in California.
And why did you choose psychology?
It made sense. You know, they made me go to meetings, like NA meetings, and I never liked them. I hated them, man. It was the worst thing. You know, it was like pulling nails. But I saw the need for people to. My brother, you know what really did it? My brother ran out of everything, and he hit a point of no return. You know, he could have had HIV. He could have had Hep C. He looked like the Walking Dead.
Was he a heroin addict?
Yeah.
Okay.
He stuck with the needle.
Yeah.
And,
so to speak.
Yeah.
Anyways.
And he lost everything, man. He took a rope and hung himself. And it was the worst loss I ever had in my life. It was the only person I had a connection with growing up. Wow. And he was 5 years older, and he was my protector. It took, you know.
What did that do to your parents?
They were devastated. You know, everybody was devastated. Bobby was a great guy, man.
Yeah. Wow. So there's something, that childhood, your parents really d you up.
Yeah. See, he lived next door. He was actually my cousin.
Right.
But he lived with me because his father died, and my mother raised him.
Yeah.
And that wasn't the best influence, but, you know, he got in a lot of trouble like I did, but... Yeah.
Your parents throughout this time, they're getting older. I can't imagine getting any closer to you because they were never close to you. And now you're gone, living in the shadows for decades. Did you maintain any kind of relationship with them? Did you check in, you know?
My father died in 85.
Okay.
Because he was 46 when I was born.
Oh, I see.
And my mom lived to 86. No, 88.
Okay.
And yeah, I maintained. I stayed in her house sometimes, our condo in Tucson. She followed me out to Tucson.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
How strange that she was kind of a loon, kind of crazy, but still wanted to be close to you.
Yeah, she wanted it. It was like a love-hate relationship. There's a part of her that what she did was confess one day that she had a relationship with a man that she worked for on Wall Street, and he wanted her to leave my father, and she was pregnant with me. So it makes sense that she kind of blamed me at that point. Here's this 80-something-year-old woman telling me at age 42 that,
And you're just like this, la, 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 la.
yeah. But it made sense. And it made sense why I went down the road I did. I had to build a sense of identity. And
Wait. Are you saying that your father that you grew up with was not your biological father?
no, he was.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. But she was having an affair while she was pregnant with you with a
guy on Wall
guy.
Street. Yeah. And he wanted her to leave my father. And then when she found out she was pregnant, that ended that relationship.
You know, I'm so worried because this is what old people do. When they're getting ready to leave the planet, that's when the secrets spill. I'm extremely dreading that day with my parents. They sit me down and tell me that they're not actually my parents.
I went and I asked her, are you doing this for me or for you right now? And she said, I have to make this confession. I said, why don't you go to a priest?
Yeah, seriously.
Why are you telling me this?
Kennedy, come on, tell the priest.
I got enough PTSD. I don't need any more.
Yeah. So, but it sounds like you guys kind of had a relationship at the end of her life.
We had a relationship. I really firmly believed that she loved me as much as she could.
Yeah.
Because of what happened to her, she had limitations.
Yeah.
And it took me years to figure that out and to learn that.
Yeah.
She was a good person. Things happened to her. And she just was limited, man.
Yeah. Yeah. Especially that generation. They were super limited. There was no communication. There was no how-to on parenting. Did she know what you were doing? Did she know about your empire?
Oh, yeah.
Really?
My father would cut out little different articles, saying where they're fortifying the highways, and he thought it was cool. And one day she busted me in the early 70s with 130 pounds of weed in my basement. And she took it away and hid it. And I said, you're not getting it. She said, you're not getting it back till you see a shrink. And so she found a psychiatrist for me and Bobby to go see. And we went she had to get the best. So we had to go to New York City to see some guy.
Yeah.
And after about six sessions, he wrote this thing on a piece of paper and went like this. And he left. He said, I'll be right back. And of course, I'm going to look at it. And said, mother, completely unstable. And that was a message he gave me and my brother.
Wow.
Yeah.
But you got your pot back.
Yeah. She gave it back. And she said, how much do you make? I said, I make 33% on my money. So if I gave you $10,000, you can give me back $13,000? And I said, yeah. And she said, no, I can't do that. She thought about it.
Wow. Man. Wow. Dude, parents are rock and roll.
Yeah.
They're more rock and roll than we give them credit for.
My mom was cool in a way. She was not like other mothers, even though she had moments. She had transient psychosis where she could just get psychotic at times, and then she'd be normal. You never knew who you were talking to when you woke up in the morning.
Yeah. Well, I'm sorry to hear about your brother, but the long story short is you got out of the game for clickbait. How many pounds of weed lifetime do you think you moved?
Growing some, doing the early Mexican, I would say 1 million pounds.
Yeah.
I
would agree with you.
If it was just Colombia, I would say 500,000 pounds.
Yeah.
So it's easy to, say Colombia because that was like, I looked at that as big time.
Yeah.
So that's why I always said 500,000. But counting all the other stuff, 1 million.
Yeah, easily.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you never
got
got caught.
but a lot of people ratted me out.
Yeah.
It was always on Discovery.
We're going to talk about, we didn't talk about the times that you actually moved to Colombia and Ecuador. And
I never moved to Colombia, but I moved to Ecuador for a while.
okay. So yeah, there's some really fun anecdotes and some other wild stories that we didn't get to that we're going to talk about on the Patreon. But I was really pleasantly surprised at this interview.
Really?
Yeah.
Good.
I want to keep talking to you. So tell us what happened. Just give us a brief synopsis of the work you've been doing in psychology for the last 25 years.
Well, I got a job while I was going for my master's because I require every therapist to have 20 hours. No. Well, you have to have 20 hours sitting across from a psychiatrist. That's right. And I got a job in a treatment center in Malibu. It was incredible. That's, you're talking about all the celebrities.
Mm-hmm.
It was like helicopters and,
Wow.
There was one celebrity that actually got sentenced to do 3 years in a treatment. So what he did, he bought a mansion and he won with a pool house, right?
Yeah.
So he lived in the pool house, came and went as he wanted. And
Nice.
he had the treatment center going.
Robert Downey Jr.?
I can't say names, man.
Ironclad NDAs. Maybe on the Patreon you'll
But
say
we
it
had
for us.
played a bad game of badminton with him.
Oh, wow. Wow. And then, and now you have a private practice?
Yeah, private practice. And I want to get back into treatment because I like, when you hit the floor running in treatment. You got 40 patients, schizophrenics mixed with bipolar, mixed with depression, anxiety, name it. And it's like, wow, I had a comedian in my group.
I'm sure you did.
This was great.
I'm sure you did.
Can I tell you real quick?
Yeah, of course.
All right. I ran a group and somebody didn't come, so they merged two groups. And you can't do a group with like 20 people. So I said, what can we do? So I ran it around the room and they said, let's just put our secrets in a hat and pass it around. And I said, okay. So before this was happening, this guy, he was a comedian, a stand-up comedian from England. Forgot his name, but he was funny as hell, man. And this girl, Kelly, she didn't want to go home and leave Malibu, so she jumped from a 2-story window and broke her foot.
Whoa.
And so she sat down next to him, and she said, oh, my toes are cold. So he ran out and he got a sock.
Yeah.
One of his socks, she put over it. So they had different secrets, this and that, and this and that. And then they pulled one out and he said, I just off of my sock this morning. Oh, place. Like nice. I knew. And Kelly is going like this. And he's squirming. And I was just laughing my ass off. The rest of the group really didn't know what was going on.
Wow.
They were laughing what he said, but they didn't know the girl just put a sock on.
What a life. What a life you've lived. Now, when you got out, this is the last question. You're out of the game. You went to school. Now you're a psychologist. What happened to all your connects and all your buyers? Did you ever keep up with any of them? Like,
I'm going to tell you, I'm like, except for one person, I'm the last one alive.
They all died.
Yeah, I'm 74, man.
Did they die of addiction? Did they go to prison?
Some killed themselves. Some died of addiction. Wow. And the majority just died, maybe a product of addiction. They developed different problems.
Yeah, if you do this life, if you're in that kind of life long enough too, you're going to die.
I feel lucky.
For sure. Whatever happened to the Luftwaffe, our favorite Mexican Nazi?
My article I gave you on him.
Yeah.
That was like after his death, they did a memorial, and that was part of it. But I can't understand computers too well, so I got the best gist of it as I could. But
when did he die?
It said so in the article. I don't remember what it said.
And were there any big cases that got put on any of your people?
He was born in 1922, so let's just say 2000.
Yeah,
probably. 2001. I think I saw on the paper.
Wow. So did you tell them, hey, I'm getting out, I'm done?
We just, we kind of just walked away from each other.
Yeah. Wow. Wow, amazing. Well, George, thank you so much. I really appreciate you coming on here. You don't really have anything to plug. Do you
Yeah,
wanna-
I do.
Oh, go ahead.
There is
Plug your clinic.
You asked me once, why did I reach out to you? Well, there's a girl named Laura who was my best friend for many years. And she said, call Johnny up and see if you can get on his podcast. And here I am with a microphone in my face.
Right? Look at that.
I feel like I'm in the grand jury again.
That's right. That's right. There's another story about that too that we'll talk about on the Patreon. So shout out to Laura. I'm glad you reached out. And you're doing good work. You're doing good work. So let's talk some more on the Patreon, but thank you. Really an incredible life.
Thank you. It's kind of like, it's thrilling to kind of go back in time, and it's therapeutic in a way too.
Yeah.
To just tell somebody like everything, you know?
Good. I'm glad you got to relax, and I did the work that you normally are doing. So thanks, George.
Yeah.
Appreciate
Thank you.
it. And we'll switch over and talk some more. Patreon.com/The Connect Show. What a career. What a life. Hall of Fame drug trafficker. Thanks for coming in.